I would ask if we're ready, but I feel like we're still waiting for people.
So I won't ask.
Chair, we were just trying to figure out who is in the rotation. But we can certainly start the work session.
All right, so we'll go ahead and call our study session to order. Noah, if you're ready. We'll go ahead and item number 1, which is GP 23, the Gilbert Spectrum Building, which also includes the zoning and the design review.
Chair Simon, Planning Commission. I'll be presenting this evening a work session item on GP 2311, Gilbert Spectrum Building 3, which also includes Z 2302 and DR 2306, associated cases for the same project. Before I start, just a really quick note, this is a project that has had a lot of work done by OED with recruiting and working with the employer Northrop Grumman to work on this office expansion. So it's definitely in line with some employment goals we have for the town. It's an exciting project for the town. So just wanted to make note of that. We'll be just looking for some feedback on the general plan and rezone cases, just some general suitability conversations about making sure that this is something that is going to work with the corner of McQueen and Elliott where this is located. And then I have some just some site plan questions that are worth considering as we continue to work on reviewing this project. So it's a bit of a complex project from how it's laid out. It's about 11 acres. The GPA and rezone area is about 9 acres, and you'll see it located in the red there, following the outline I've left there. But that doesn't follow the parcel boundaries within the Gilbert Spectrum development, which follows the yellow lines that are provided on this map here, and that's the DR case. So that covers about 11.2 acres, 11.3 acres. The discrepancy is because the GPA and rezone, the zoning and commercial, or general plan and zoning classification don't follow the parcel boundaries that currently exist today because of platting that was done later on to accommodate the Gilbert Spectrum development. So I'll walk through that just a little bit here with our current general plan conditions. It's general commercial on that corner, which matches what the general plan category is on the other 3 corners. It's surrounded by industrial property that makes up the Gilbert Spectrum development. And it's a pretty simple corner in that respect. There's a recently reclassified area for residential 25 to 50 across the street that you'll see kind of butting into the picture on the left there, but mostly GC on the hard corner there. Likewise, the current zoning is community commercial, which matches 3 of the 4 corners, and the 4th corner being shopping center. The surrounding this property is light industrial with a PAD overlay that accommodates the Gilbert Spectrum development. And again, just matches the hard corners, follows kind of our traditional land use pattern that we see around a lot of arterial corners in the town. So that general plan amendment is transferring the general commercial portion to the industrial land use classification. It'll reconcile that parcel with the remainder of the industrial area surrounding it in that Gilbert Spectrum development, since this is still a part of that master site plan, and it'll correct that parcel overlap issue that you see with the general commercial classification overlapping onto other parcels that have industrial activities happening on them. Likewise, it'll take the same 9 acres and transfer it from community commercial to light industrial with the PAD overlay extended on top of it that covers the rest of the Gilbert Spectrum development. It reconciles that parcel, again, with the rest of those light industrial activities around it and corrects that parcel overlap that I discussed with you. So when we move to discussion, the input I would be looking for includes just some suitability conversations around that move from general commercial to industrial and from community commercial zoning to light industrial commercial zoning on that hard arterial corner. I've included an image of that hard arterial corner as it exists right now as a vacant lot that you'll see on your screen. Just making sure that this is how we want to treat this corner that has 3 corners of commercial going forward, and making sure that the Gilbert Spectrum development is developing in a way that we see consistent with other land use goals in the town. I'll move on to the design review case, just to introduce what's being proposed on that site once the general plan amendment and rezone would be approved. It is a 2-story building with 120,000 square feet of office space, so a 60,000 foot footprint. It's identical to the building to the west of it. It is another office building that matches the one already occupied by Northrop Grumman. There are landscape pedestrian paths and 602 parking spaces being added to complete the parking areas for the broader industrial area, this Gilbert Spectrum community, and then it completes some of the drive aisles and drive stubs that you see in that development that still need to be finished, kind of rounding out this portion of the master site plan for the Gilbert Spectrum development. Here's just a site plan showing some of the pedestrian circulation, how that building will sit on the site. What I've also done is included that small L-shaped piece that you saw on that original map. That is the extra 2 acres of this site. It's just additional parking area. It's a temporary retention basin right now, and it's being proposed to be turned into parking that kind of aligns and matches with the existing parking areas for buildings 1 and building 7 in the Gilbert Spectrum development. Landscape plan is pretty straightforward. It's extending landscaping that already exists on the hard corner of the arterial and to the west on the building 5 site, and then extending the additional landscaping to the south. And you'll just see some other parking lot landscaping distributed throughout, matching the existing Gilbert Spectrum development. Here are those elevations, and I'll skip to the next slide just to show you my apologies. I'm skipping a few slides forward to show you that those elevations match the existing building, that building 5 that's on Elliott Road, just to the west of this site. And so you will see, going back to the elevations, that those, it is nearly identical. The material and color palette remains the same that you'll see here. It actually uses the existing building as the guide for that. That building, we deem meets our employment design standards. We find it to be consistent with the surrounding environment that still has a lot of that Mediterranean desert feel to it, color palettes matching as well. And the real question would just be whether a perfect match for the existing to that existing building with the new one is consistent with the fact that it sits at a hard corner, and generally on those hard corners of arterials, we like to see additional corner treatments, other design elements that really emphasize that corner, especially when those corners serve as a gateway into the Gilbert community like this one does, which is one of the first intersections you come into when coming into Gilbert on either McQueen or Elliott roads. And then again, just showing you kind of side by side the comparison with the existing and the new. Everything is pretty much carried over from that building to this one. And then, again, I mentioned the elevation design, the suitability of the building design for that corner. Also, if you have any comments on landscaping design, that site circulation pattern that's being proposed surrounding the building, and the overall quality of the site design as this adds to an existing master site plan and has to kind of fit all these stubs and extra pieces off of that master site plan into this one, just making sure that it's doing that in a really seamless quality way that we like to see with the continuation of some of these existing site plans in the town. So with that, I will bring it to back to the commission for discussion. I appreciate the time. Thank you, Chair Simon. Thank you, Commission.
All right, thank you, Noah. Anybody have questions or comments for Noah? Anybody? No? Commissioner Fay.
Thank you, Noah. This is a complex one. I look at plans not all day, every day, but every day, and I had a hard time orienting and understanding the big picture of what was happening. In terms of your suitability, your rezoning, compatibility with the neighbors, all that stuff, this is fine. In fact, this is the right place for this thing to go. The only observation I've got that kind of jumped off the page at me is they're using 10-foot diameter piping for underground storage, underground drainage storage. And they're using an absolute boatload of the stuff. I mean, they're gonna, it looks like to me, like, particularly that southern L portion, they're gonna have to dig that entire thing out, line the entire thing with. This is the most, short of putting in one of those big vaults like at ASU where they're trying to do HVAC stuff, this is probably the most I've ever seen. I mean, it seems to me, economically, it's their money, but this is the our inspectors are gonna have to be Johnny on the spot on this one.
Commissioner Fay, it's something I can address with engineering and making sure that the scope of what they're proposing is in line with this area. I will note that the goal is to accommodate the completion of the Gilbert Spectrum development, which is a lot of paved area. And there's still other pad sites to the south that still need to be filled in. And so I think there's an eye to the future for this whole campus being routed through some more centralized retention features on top of replacing the retention area that already exists on that L piece. So,
Well, they're replacing, as I read it, they're replacing the retention areas with underground, and they're
Yes.
putting their own underground. And once it's there, they don't need to add more, I mean, it'll be there. It's just the most I've ever seen. It stood out as an oddity. It works. It's just a little off the beaten path.
sure, I'm happy to address that with engineering and again, check on the scale for those improvements. Thanks, Commissioner Fay.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Commissioner Bianchi?
Thank you, Chair. No, actually, not too many comments. I agree with Commissioner Fay. The land use request is very reasonable. The site development regulations are all met or exceeded. It's going to match the adjacent parcels, and it allows for unified campus expansion. I would agree with you on the building corner enhancements. That would probably be welcome for the reasons that you had mentioned, but other than that, I don't have anything else to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right, anybody else? No? No, I would agree with everything that's been said. I don't know, I think there could be something done with potentially the north-facing, and maybe the east-facing, elevations. Other than that, I think the land use is fine. I think it's in a great spot. Obviously, Northrop is a great anchor in the community, so I would I appreciate what's being done there. So I think that's all we've got for you.
Chair, we can look into the design features for the north and east elevations. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Kristen, we'll move on to you. Item number 2, DR 22-115, Val Vista and Market Drive throughs.
All right. Good evening, Commission. I hope everyone's doing well tonight. The project that I'm looking for feedback on tonight is for 2 proposed drive-throughs. The project site is located on the southeast corner of Val Vista and Market. It's zoned regional commercial, and it's approximately 1.5 acres. The site is part of a master site plan with a proposed hotel that's currently in design review to the east and an existing hotel to the east of that. All right. So I forgot to throw a slide in here, but just to preface, the feedback that I'm looking for tonight is site plan specific. This is in very preliminary stages. First review comments are due out on March 9th, so it hasn't even completed a first review yet. We're just looking to get a jump start on some of the questions that we're having. So seen here is the original site plan. In this version, there's an access drive to the south. It doesn't currently align with the existing access drive across that private roadway. That drive enters the Mountainside Fitness area. So the applicant had submitted a technical variance to our traffic team to keep those drives unaligned. It wasn't initially supported, and it was suggested that they revise the site plan to align the driveways or to just eliminate the drive altogether. By eliminating the drive altogether, they would have sole access through the hotel parcel to the east, and they wouldn't have any direct access to their site at all. The applicant has expressed some serious concern over the option of eliminating the drive aisle altogether, just because they wouldn't have any direct access and everyone would have to access through the hotel. So we spent some time, we've had some conversations with them about different alternative site plans. This is one of the newest versions of site plans where they've tweaked it a little bit to align the access drive with the existing drive across the private roadway to the south. And then seen here is the updated site plan, and some of our staff concerns that we just wanted addressed today are on the parcel 2 drive-through. The exit of the drive-through exits straight into the access drive. The pickup window for the drive-thru is located on the west side of the building, so there is room for some vehicle queuing if the access drive gets too busy for cars to exit right away, but it's still not an ideal layout. Staff is also concerned with the layout of the site and the use of the angled parking on parcel 1. The site itself already has pretty limited access, so to restrict those parking spaces to one-way parking only, vehicles are only able to access those spaces coming from the one direction, and it just seems to create some flow issues. And then lastly, we feel like the site itself just has a lot going on. Drive-throughs are permitted in the regional commercial zoning district, but for this particular site, perhaps 2 of them is just too much since there's such limited access on the site. All right, and again, this project is in very early stages. That's why I'm only bringing the site plan to you. We're just trying to get a jump start on all the circulation questions that we have. So if you have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them.
All right, thanks, Kristen. Anybody like to start? Questions? Yeah, Commissioner Anderson.
I guess I'm just a little confused as to why we're seeing this at this point, to be honest. I mean, if this is conceptual, I mean, this is supposed to be a DR study case. We don't have any elevations or anything. So does this mean once they figure out their site problems, their site issues, you bring this back before us for another study session?
So Chair, Commissioner Anderson, it is in for a first review. This was the original one that they had submitted that we are currently reviewing under their first review, but we had a lot of comments after they submitted the technical variance, so that's why they gave us this conceptual site plan. When they submit for second review, we're going to incorporate all the feedback that we get from here on this site plan.
And then what, are they coming back for another study session?
It-
or Does
probably.
it go to, okay. It just seems like this is a huge waste of time, to be honest. I don't know why we just didn't wait to get all the comments. I mean, I don't know what more feedback we can really give on this, to be honest. So help me out a little bit understand the connection drive that's in question, that's out of an alignment. Which one is that?
It's the one on the south. On this screen, you can see it clouded. Yeah, right there.
Right there. Okay, so that's not aligning with what's happening on the other side of the drive?
Yes. So it's a private road right there, and on the other side is the entrance to the Mountainside Fitness Complex.
Okay, and then where is that other drive that's on the other side? How far off in alignment is it?
You don't know off the top of your head, do you? What's the question? How far unaligned those 2 drives are?
How they're aligned now, right?
The technical variance that they had submitted?
Oh, it was at the, was that like 100 feet? I don't know, it's to the, it's aligned in this drawing, but they wanted to put it at the parking line, whatever that.
Clint, could you please come to a microphone because we have our minute taker remote?
Sorry.
Thank you.
They're just asking how far unaligned they were originally.
I can look it up real, I don't know the exact distance between the two, but I can, it's probably like 100 feet or so, would be my guess. Do you want me to go? I can go measure it real quick.
No, that's okay. So I guess when you guys come back for your other study session, if we could just show where the drive is on the opposite side of the drive that's out of alignment, because you're not showing it here, and that's, I mean, I don't know how much more feedback we can give on that. So, I mean, other than that, I mean, there's nothing more to discuss, on this particular case, I feel. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Questions or comments? Yeah, Commissioner Davis.
Kristen, I guess I agree with you that the site plan it's kind of a mess right now. It is going to back up. It's going to cause problems for the hotels. All 3 of them aren't going to work well together with the current configuration. I'm concerned with the dead-end parking, the angled parking. It just isn't working together, and I agree they need to make some major changes. They're trying to shoehorn a lot in here, and maybe that's not the best thing for this site. It's a busy, busy corner, and you've got a lot of hotels in here, a lot of people. I get you want some restaurants in there, but this is a lot on that corner, so that's where I'm at.
Thank you.
All right, yeah, Commissioner Bianchi.
Thank you, Chair. Kristen, couple quick questions. So in the parking, is it going to be shared parking? with the restaurants and hotel, or are they providing enough to meet that?
It is a shared, or, I'm sorry, Chair Commissioner Bianchi, it is a shared parking agreement with the hotel, but they are over on their parking because of the intended user for Pad A. They've requested significant parking. So we expressed that to kind of make the site plan work, that they could eliminate some of that parking to tweak it a little bit, and they've said that they would prefer to keep it if possible,
Okay.
but they are overparked.
And then in regards to the drive-through, one's dual lane, one's single lane, does it really matter? Do we have a standard on that, or is it just because the queuing space is similar between single drive and dual drive?
So do we have a standard on the queuing?
I'm just curious how one's a single drive, the other one's a dual drive. And I don't know if that's just because it's based off of the amount of queuing space for the square footage, or how that's determined.
It's just the design that they landed on. We have stacking space requirements for uses, and then I believe it's beverage services does specify if it's double laned, then the queuing is different than if it were single laned.
Okay.
But
As regards comments, I agree with Commissioner Davis and what staff had said. It's a lot to kind of fit on here with the hotel as well. Just looking at the site plan, I guess one of the possible issues I see is just the trash enclosure orientation, primarily on the south side. It just looks, I don't know if they can meet that turning radius, so maybe Solid Waste has reviewed this or provided comments, or maybe they haven't. But it seems like they would almost have to go against the angled parking to get a truck in there and then back it out. And I'm just wondering if that could possibly be addressed or improved, but that's just my comment. That's all my comments. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Commissioner Fay?
I actually have one, I agree with the majority of what's been said. One kind of complimentary is I look for drive-through queues if they're going to back up and bust. I want them to bust into your own parking lot instead of out onto the right-of-way, and both of these do. I did think it was, Commissioner Bianchi kind of hit on something, that because one's got a double queue and one's got a single, which usually is driven by the type of tenant. My understanding is they don't have tenants yet. They're just putting in a pad and they're gonna figure out who's going in there. So it's kind of strange that they would be specific enough to know they need dual and a single, but, you know, if we're okay with that, I mean, and if they want to restrict who can go in the future, I guess that's, you know, I don't know, that's their business. But in terms of the orientation, while it messes up their site, it's not from public interest necessarily as objectionable as if, like the Black Rock Coffee we had a few weeks ago.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? All right, Kristen, I feel like there's just a lot going on here. I would agree. I don't know if this site is conducive for 2 drive-throughs, although it is by right, so I understand that. It just seems like there's a lot trying to be forced on this site, so I understand that's why this is coming to us tonight, just for some initial comment. It almost rather see if there's one drive-through and a sit-down type restaurant. I think that'd be great, but you know, obviously by right they can do that on there and we can give them comments. So that's the only thing I have. I would agree with everything else that's been said. So, all right, thank you.
thank you very much.
Okay, that went quick. Go ahead and discuss the regular meeting agenda. Tonight on the consent agenda, we've got the DR 22-153 Perform Air International, DR 22-168 Hilton Garden Inn, DR 22-171 Gabriella Point Multifamily, and the DR 2294 Cobblestone number 48. For any reason, or do any of those need to come off of the consent agenda item, or consent agenda?
Chairman?
Yeah.
Chairman Simon, I have a question on both 7 and 9, and it might be a fast question. I assume this is both NOAA, since everything else is NOAA. On item 9, in the narrative, it says they're 3 to 4 story buildings, but everything in the discussion I saw 2 and 3 story buildings, and that is kind of a pretty big significant difference. If that's just a typo or an error, I'm fine leaving that one on. If it's actually intended to be 4 stories, that clarification makes a difference to me.
Do we need to pull that?
Noah? You can certainly answer that one question,
To come up, so that's.
please.
Thank you. Commissioner Fay, I apologize. Can you repeat your question?
The narrative at in the very introduction said it's 3 to 4 story buildings. Everything I saw on the plans and in the details said 2 to 3 story buildings, and I think that difference is a very significant one. And if it's just a typo and it meant to say 2 to 3,
Where does it say 2 to 3 stories, Commissioner Fay?
2 to 3 it has throughout in a bunch of places, but 3 to 4 is the only place I saw it was in the introduction. Is this meant for 4-story buildings?
It has 4-story buildings because they were allowed by the PAD zoning that was approved last year.
Okay, then let me,
So it sounds like we should pull this item in.
we should pull this one. I think I need to.
Okay.
Because I need to understand better.
Okay, so item number 9 we'll pull.
Yes, and number 7, I've got drainage questions because I don't think it addressed, the plans that I saw didn't address regional drainage at all.
Okay, so we'll pull number 7 and number 9.
Sorry, everybody.
Anybody else? No? Okay, so we'll leave items number 8 and number 10 on the consent for now. On the non-consent, we'll move number 7 and number 9 to the non-consent. On non-consent, we've got item number 11, GP 22-14, the district Cooley Station, 12, which is the zoning 2214 district at Cooley Station, and then use permit number 13, 22-54 district at Cooley Station. All on the non-consent. I'm assuming we need to keep those on non-consent. Is Keith here? I haven't seen Keith.
Chairman, yes, those do have to stay on non-consent.
Okay.
Keith will be presenting remotely as he is ill.
Okay. And then item 14, we've got DR 22-176, Mutt's Canine Cantina. Does that need to stay on the non-consent? Does anybody wish to hear that? Are we good moving it to the consent
I
agenda?
would have questions on that.
You do have questions?
do,
Okay,
yeah.
so Commissioner Bianchi has questions on that one. So we've got item 15, DR 22-127, Madera Gilbert. And that one will stay on the non-consent. And then item 16, DR 22-63, Morrison Ranch multifamily, I believe we have that staying on non-consent as well. All right, so as I've got it, we have the non-consent, or excuse me, we have the consent items number 8 and number 10, and moving number 7 and number 9 to non-consent, remaining 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn study session. We'll be back in, gosh, we have 30 minutes, really? We'll be back at 6 o'clock for our regular meeting.
I thought you would feel like a need to play by the rules so that I would break the rules for your behalf. I do this where
Well, I appreciate it. I think I'm gonna be replaced by Charles, though.
we'll take it with you then.
I put 2 in my car. I mean, I'll take it. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll go ahead and call everybody in up. All right, we'll go ahead and call our regular meeting to order, and the first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could all rise. All right, can I get a roll call?
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Davis?
Here.
Commissioner Anderson?
Here.
Commissioner Fay?
Present.
Commissioner Bianchi?
Here?
Vice Chairman Munn?
Here.
Chairman Simon?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, and before we went to break, we had looked at our agenda. So on the agenda, we're going to be moving items number 7 and number 9 off the consent, moving those to the non-consent. Non-consent will stay the same.
Commissioner Simon?
Yes.
During the break, I was talking with Noah. I thought there was a typo. It turns out there is a typo. That's what the issue was. If we want to
Okay.
leave 7, no. If
9.
we want to leave 9 on consent, I'm fine with that. It's just a typo in one place.
Okay. So we're good with, everybody good with leaving 9 on the consent? All right, we'll leave 9 on consent. So we're going to pull 7, and we will move 7 to consent, leave 9 on the, excuse me, leave 9 on consent, move 7 to the non-consent. I will pull it together. All right, and I would need a motion to approve the agenda.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as amended with the consent being 8, 9, and 10, and moving number 7, DR 22153, Perform Air International, to the non-consent.
All right, thank you. I have a motion by the vice chair. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Johnson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we need to poll? And I don't have the ability? All right, you should have it up now.
So if you push one of these for yes,
Yeah, okay.
and then you'll see that, oh, so we're all voted, and then it'll tell us what we did.
All right, motion carries. All right, with that, we'll move on to the communications from citizens. At this time, members of the public may comment on matters within the jurisdiction of the town, but not on the agenda. The commission response is limited to responding to criticism, asking staff to review a matter commented upon, or asking that a matter be put on a future agenda. Do we have any communications of citizens? All right, not seeing any. We will move on to a report from the council liaison. Councilmember Anderson.
It's okay, you can call me September.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to be here and pleasure to see you all. I don't have anything in particular other than we're missing Kevin Durant's debut tonight.
Well, can we put it up on the big screen? All right, thank you. All right, we'll move on to the public hearing consent items. All items listed below are considered the public hearing consent calendar. The commission may, by a single motion, approve any number of items where, after opening the public hearing, no person requests the item to be removed from the consent calendar. If such a request is made, the commission shall then withdraw the item from the public hearing consent calendar for the purpose of public discussion and separate motion. Other items on the agenda may be added to the consent calendar and approved under a single motion. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda consisting of item number 8, DR 22168, Hilton Garden Inn, item number 9, DR 22171, Gabriella Point Multifamily, and item number 10, DR 22-94, Cobblestone, number 48.
All right, thank you. I have a motion on the table by the vice chair. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Johnson. All those in favor? Oh, excuse me. Poll? Go ahead and cast. And the motion carries 7-0. All right, with that, we'll go to our public hearing non-consent items. Non-consent public hearing items may be heard at an individual public hearing and will be acted upon by the commission by a separate motion. During the public hearings, anyone wishing to comment in support of or in opposition to a public hearing item may do so. If you wish to comment on a public hearing item, you must fill out a public comment form, which is in the back of the room, indicating the item number on which you wish to be heard. Once the hearing is closed, there will be no further comment from the public unless requested by a member of the commission. With that, we will go to item number 7, DR 22-153, and Noah.
Good evening once again, Chair Simon, Commissioners. I'll be presenting a design review case on DR 22-153, Perform Air International. It's a industrial building located located in the an industrial park located on the very western boundary of the town. It's about a 1.2 acre site that is in a long-standing industrial area within the town. Here, the zoning here is light industrial, and so this is an extension of light industrial activities that are already happening on the northern side of the site. The property owners are the same, so this is serving as a continuation of the site, the building that is just to the north. Even though the way light industrial zoning works, you can do 0-foot setbacks and have them as function like distinct buildings. I'll show you that here on the site plan. You'll see that there's a 15,700 square foot building. There is it's adjacent to the existing building. It follows a pattern of construction that has been used many times in this light industrial area. There's 26 additional parking spaces and a private screened yard in the rear of the site. There's a new access point onto Hamilton Place here, or Hamilton Court there, and you'll see that detailed in orange. This is the landscaping for the site. It includes a retention area on the front landscape setback, and I know there was a question related to retention here from the commission, and so I will make sure to detail that here. In addition to the landscaping areas that are being provided, which are deemed to be consistent with the existing structure to the north, they are providing a retention improvements that includes a small underground retention area in the under the parking area in the front of the structure, and that also will complement the small retention area that funnels water into a storm drain in the front landscape setback, in addition to a storm drain system that's being built throughout the site. That private yard space in the back will drain south towards the storm drains that are provided along the southern side of the site. Here's the elevations. Once again, they've been the subject of some discussion. This was brought forward for a study session on January 4, and you'll see that the building is primarily a CMU block structure with colors that match the existing building, and then a metal canopy structure with colors that are designed to match the existing structure. You'll see a condition in your staff report that details just some minor changes that need to be made prior to construction drawings that just demonstrate that the colors and the materials will be consistent between the buildings, changing some notation in those drawings, and ensuring that compatibility between buildings. If they need to do anything to make the existing structure match this new structure, we've mentioned that a minor administrative design review would be necessary for that building refresh, but all of that is detailed in the staff report for your review. This is ultimately what that structure looks like when constructed, and compared to the existing structure, you'll see a lot of the similarities there between the two. There were some minor differences that were brought up during the study session. There have been some minor changes to design from the applicant, and staff deems that the plans that they have for this site overall will marry these two together very, very well. Again, since most of the questions are related to retention and landscaping, I'll try to focus the discussion there. Although if there's any questions related to building design, I'm happy to answer them as well. Here's that material palette. I noted some of the to match existing and TBDs in this paint palette, and that has to do with the potential of a refresh on the northern structure as well. That just needs to be clarified, and that's been noted in a condition in the staff report. But otherwise, staff deems the design to be compatible with the surrounding area, and especially the building to the north. Staff recommendation is to approve DR 22-153, Perform Air International, with the light industrial zoning, PAD overlay on 1.19 acres. With that, I will offer an opportunity for discussion. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you, Chair Simon.
All right, thank you, Noah. Does anybody have questions or comments?
I
Commissioner Fay.
pulled it. I don't want to completely dominate, but clearly it's
you.
It's on me. And I did have both landscape and drainage questions, but my notes don't. I think I was grinding out the numbers on the landscaping. It seemed small. It seemed a low percent intuitively, but I think I was able to resolve it yesterday. But on the drainage, so really, I know I always keep being the drainage guy, but the drainage, when we have these regional drainage or multi-site drainage, there's a couple checks. And really what I'm looking for is, this is how much drainage we're going to generate or how much we have to retain on site. Here's what we are, here's where we're putting it, something like that. And this one does, it's on page 23 of the item, and it does calculate 10,664 cubic feet of needed retention, which intuitively sounds correct. And then do they have it? Retention provided. The retention for this site is provided by the existing regional retention basin for the Elliott Commerce Park Plaza located at the south end of Hamilton Court. Okay, is there enough capacity in that? Do they even own that basin? I mean, we've had that problem before. How many other sites are, how big is that basin? How many other sites are, it's 100,000 and we've got 90,000 in it and we're going to now consume the last 10,000? That would be a good answer. And I don't see any of that here. Did I miss it?
Commissioner Fay, that's correct. That was looked at primarily by engineering, and I could potentially defer to Tom Condit, although I don't want to put him on the spot necessarily.
Oh, I wouldn't hesitate to put him on the spot.
All
I
right.
didn't realize that.
Well,
And if there is just a line that says drainage engineering or town engineering has reviewed this and has confirmed that there is existing capacity, that usually I'd be looking for numbers, but that statement alone would have prevented me from wanting to pull this.
Sure. I can refer to Tom Condit, who might be familiar with the Elliott Commerce Park drainage and how we're handling the shared retention area in that development, since it's a pretty active development area.
Yeah, Commissioner Fay and commissioners, thank you.
Yeah, you're regretting showing up now, aren't you?
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. Anyway, I am excited to talk about it. I do believe, and again, I was not prepared. I did not do the review on this, but I'd be glad to go back and verify this. I know when we do our drainage reviews, we do look at that. This particular development does have a significant amount of off-site storage. We've talked in the past about certain developments in town where we have these questionable drainage basins that were installed and they're no longer owned by, someone who seems to be, taking care of the drainage. I do not believe that's the case for this particular subdivision. I know we've had quite a bit of development here, but I will verify that and make sure that our engineers have done that analysis.
Yeah, that one up north is an extreme. I wouldn't assume that every time, but
Right.
but the idea that we're overusing it or we're just relying on it like it's a,
Right.
sure, it's the national debt, just put more money on it.
Yeah.
That is a concern. So I guess that was the concern to me, and I didn't see an answer to it here as I dug through the different sheets. And I left a message for Noah, but I didn't think to call you.
Okay, and again, like I say, I will look into that and I'll make sure to get back with Noah and get back with you on that.
Okay.
All right, anybody else? Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, can that be handled by just stipulating, there's 5 conditions right now, just by stipulating an additional condition in the recommendation? Thank you.
So can the applicant add an additional stipulation, or is that essentially the,
Yes.
we can add a stipulation?
We can under motion. Mm-hmm.
What would the stipulation be?
That there is on-site, that we confirm that there is, or we confirm or they confirm or something, that there is adequate on-site retention or regional retention for this project?
And I would assume their
Oh, now we're,
engineer of record would do that. So I just want to be careful that we're not taking on the role of being a civil engineer here.
no, you're right, because once, you caught me on this once before. We're essentially stipulating that they'll comply with code. And if their engineer of record has done it, he hasn't documented it, as far as I can tell.
Commissioner Fay, if I believe a condition that could potentially work is prior to construction document submittal, any of those engineering drawings and drainage and grading drawings that they're providing should have clear calculations demonstrating that, noting that that regional retention is being used and providing some sort of even simple table that
Yes.
demonstrates the existing conditions in the retention basin in addition to what's being added to it. We could potentially proceed like that.
Yeah, I mean, I assume we would already be asking for it, and either I caught a gap, or more likely, there's just a report sitting somewhere that we just didn't see here. But sure, I'd be fine with that.
Commissioner, I think those kinds of clarifying stipulations can be important to just patch up any minor things that we catch in these kinds of reviews and what's on their drawings and in these packets.
All right, any other questions for Noah? Do we see reason to have the applicant come up and present? Is there anything the applicant would like to add? I don't know if the applicant is here, but yeah, nothing? Okay. And then I don't have any comment from the community on this, so we'll go ahead and, if there's nothing else for Noah, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on it, bring it up to the dais for any conversation or motion. Right.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commission.
Thank you, Noah.
Yeah, Chairman, my only comment is kind of like what Commissioner Anderson said, that I think that the engineer of record should have taken this into account. So whatever stipulation that we can put in, if we do put one in, should be as simple as just a table showing the volume or whatever. But I don't want to get too far down that way, personally.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I feel like that's just something that's a CD level type of engineering. So I don't know if a stipulation is needed. I think the discussion that we have, it's recorded, Tom's here. It's something that I think when they submit CDs, they'll be aware of and design towards.
I concur too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, if we're good with it, I'll entertain a motion.
Well, Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve item number 7, DR 22-153, Perform Air International.
All right, I've got a recommendation for approval of item number 7 from the Vice Chair. Do I have a second?
I will second the motion.
I have a second from Commissioner Fay, although we're going to cast votes, so I'm getting there, getting closer. And the item carries 7-0. All right, thank you. We will move on from there. If I can see. To item number 11, 12, and 13. I think we're going to do a combined presentation on these, and then we have to take separate motion on each, I believe. So we'll go Keith, and I believe he's online.
He is remote.
Okay, so Keith, are you online? Can you hear us?
Chair Simon, members of the commission, yes, I can. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. You're up.
All right, sweet, thank you. Apologize, I can't be there in person tonight. Still getting over a cold. Hopefully, it doesn't impair my ability to for you guys to understand what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me figure that out. Oh, wrong screen. Hold on 1 second while I share the right screen. Oh, I didn't want to share that one. Okay. This is the one I wanted to share. Can you guys see this screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so the three cases that I have before you tonight, I know you're going to be taking them in three different motions, but I wanted to combine all these District at Cooley Station cases. So I have, if I can click on the right screen. So I'll talk about the request in just a second, but as far as the location of the site is concerned for District at Cooley Station, it's located, as you can see on the screen in front of you, at the northwest corner of Wrecker and Williamsfield Roads in the Cooley Station area. And you can see the site is highlighted in that kind of aqua color. And currently today, the site is actually farm field. And you can see all the unbuilt and areas that are under construction around it. To give you a little context on the where the site is comparison to other developments, you can see a lot of other developments. Almost all of them have been approved, except a few of them. There's some that are further south by along the railroad tracks. There's one right along the railroad tracks that has not been approved yet. And then there's a few others to the far west on the south side of Williamsfield that haven't been approved. But most recently, you saw Fred's Place at the northeast corner was approved. And then you have all these other multifamily developments, and you have the Fry's at the southeast corner, and then of course the Verde at Cooley Station development right across the street from this on the south side of Williamsfield Road. So kind of wanted to just give you a little context regionally where this is. So as far as the request tonight that is before you, there's, as I stated, there's three requests. A minor general plan amendment on 15 acres to go from general commercial to village center, and then a PAD rezone with a couple of deviations on also it's 15 acres, as I stated, to go from to rezone it from general commercial, which happened about I think it was about in 2018 or so, the town rezoned it from Gateway Village Center to general commercial due to market conditions, and now the market conditions have changed, and so they're coming back to the Gateway Village Center zoning. And then the last request is a conditional use permit to allow ground floor residential in the Gateway Village Center zoning district. So the general plan, as I've already stated, they're changing it from general commercial to village center on the whole property. And then the zoning, like I've already talked about, going from general commercial, which was the site was rezoned from GVC to general commercial in 2018, and now obviously they're going back to the Gateway Village Center zoning designation due to changing market conditions. And the applicant can obviously explain more about the exact reasons why from that standpoint. The development plan, just in a nutshell, the development plan that's in front of you has a few things going on. So you can see that there's 612 apartment units in two large building clusters. They are 4-story building clusters. It will be constructed in 3 phases, the entire development. The building along Williamsfield Road and Verde Drive on the west side will be phase 1, and the large 4-story building along Haskell Street will be phase 2, with the commercial at the corner being phase 3. They're proposing 2 5.5 to 6-story parking garages, and as you can see on the development plan in front of you, they're kind of in the middle of the building clusters. A portion of that garage will be 1.5 stories or so will be underground, and then of course the top part of the garage will not stick above the existing 4-story building. And then for the building along Williamsfield and Verde, 2 stories of it approximately will be underground, and then the rest of it will be above ground, and it will not extend above the 4-story building. And it's kind of unique, this we call it, the developer calls it a wraparound apartment type development, which is very unique in the town. I believe we've only approved this in one other spot. So this is a new concept. Wanted to point out that also that there is 25,000, let me back up. So there's about 46 dwelling units to the acre that's being proposed on this site. The site also is proposing about 25,500 square feet of freestanding commercial at the hard corner. And with those buildings being 2 stories tall and commercial space on the ground floor and second story office/residential on the second floor. We don't know yet exactly if it's going to be residential or office space on the top, but they wanted to have a little bit of flexibility there, so we'll see what they propose in the future. And then also on the ground floor of the commercial building or the large residential buildings, there's 13,500 square feet of ground floor commercial, with about 6,500 in each building. And you can see on the site, on the development plan in front of you, those spaces. There's one along Williamsfield, and you can see where it's talking about restaurant market, Herbo Market, a public gym, and WeWork conference room space. And then you can see it also along the other building that's along Wrecker Road. They have some commercial space a little more internally, but and then a lot of commercial space on the ground floor along Wrecker Road. So it's about 13,500 square feet total. And then there's 61 on-street parking spaces. So just for your information, and that's what they're proposing to, some of them are already existing. So I kind of highlighted them for you on the screen. So all of the spaces that are in green, I hope you can see that. They're highlighted green. Those are existing spaces that have already been constructed that are out there today. And you can see them along Wrecker Road as well. The yellow on your screen are proposed decel lanes. Now, which will cause the removal of some of the existing, it'll cause the removal of 11 existing on-street parking spaces. In the development plan, I just wanted to note that this is a revised development plan. It's a little bit different than the one that is in your packet. The applicant was finally able to update the development plan to show those decel lanes and with the removed parking, on-street parking spaces. So that's why I'm highlighting it in yellow. So there'll be a decel lane for this entrance off of Wrecker. It's about 100 feet long. And there is a proposed decel lane. Oh, excuse me. I accidentally clicked it. There's a proposed decel lane here that for people to turn right onto Williamsfield, and that one's about 100. I think it's about 125 feet long in length. And then a decel lane here at this other main entrance along Williamsfield, which is obviously much longer and kind of transitions into a bus stop. And then the rest of these will be on-street parking that will remain. The blue spaces that are over here is on-street parking that the developer will be constructing along Verde Drive and along Haskell Street. So we wanted to continue that on-street parking theme to create a barrier from the roadway, and also to provide a more neo-traditional, pedestrian-friendly streetscape environment. So for your information, currently there are 7, per that original development plan, there were 72 on-street parking spaces. With the addition of the decel lanes, there will now be 61 on-street parking spaces, which is a reduction of 11 from the original plan. So I just wanted to mention that to you. So the parking for the commercial will be behind, obviously you can see it here, will be behind these shop spaces. And we're reviewing the design review case right now. We've gone through a first review for all of this development. We're reviewing the elevations, which we have a lot of comments on that you'll see in the future. And but these parking garages will also be able to provide some of the parking for the commercial as well. So as far as the proposed deviations that the applicant is proposing, just wanted to go over those. They have 3 total deviations. The first deviation is building transparency. Along Williamsfield Road, they are proposing 59% transparency as far as windows and display areas and doors and outdoor patios. They have to have 75% minimum of window transparency, and they're proposing 59%. And then along Recker Road, they're proposing 67% transparency where 75% is required. All other locations on the site, let me go back to that. All other buildings along Williamsfield, the residential buildings on the ground floor, they will be exceeding the transparency requirements. You can see 77% along Williamsfield, 80% along Recker, and then along the other residential buildings, they also exceed the standard of which is 50% for the residential portion, not the commercial portion, the residential portion. They'll be exceeding all of those standards as well. A lot more transparency than required by the code. The last deviation that I wanted to show you is the vehicular access. So per the code, vehicular access shall be from a non-arterial street or alley, and the applicant has requested to have 2 access locations. And I will show you that in just a second, but I just wanted to show you, I apologize, I should have shown this graphic while I was talking about transparency. So this is a really cool graphic that shows you that transparency for the commercial development, for commercial portion of the development, and you can see the hatched areas is the transparency. So like I said, 67% along Recker and 59% along Williamsfield. So this is kind of gives you a little bit better visual graphic of what that transparency will look like. And I'll talk more about that. So as far as that transparency, I apologize for kind of jumping around a little bit. So that commercial percentage of 59%, the applicant states that hold on one second. So according to the applicant, the reason they're proposing this transparency is to make room for columns and structural elevation elements that are consistent with the Cooley Station neo-traditional character, which calls for a blend of glazing and traditional brick and stone and natural materials required for the site, and not an expansive mass of glass. That would be kind of a departure of what we're trying to achieve in Cooley Station. So that's a stark contrast to the residential style with historic architectural elements. So too much glass would kind of take away from that Cooley Station theme that we're trying to achieve with that brick and high quality materials. So they have to have room for that, to have that front and center right along the road, along Recker and Williamsfield. So that is basically the reason why they're proposing that transparency. So the next is the driveway restriction. I'll talk a little bit more about the driveway restriction deviation. So according to the applicant, the Land Development Code, it states that access shall be from a non-arterial street in the Gateway Village Center zoning district. So in effect, this standard that's in our code directs all vehicular access to Verde Drive on the west and Haskell on the north. And that's what would need to be required to access the site. So access on those residential streets is proposed as required by the code, but it's to access those parking garages, as you can see here on the screen. Well, this garage will be accessed through the parking lot, but this garage on the west will be accessed off of Verde Drive. So the applicant's proposing to deviate from this standard by proposing one access on both Williamsfield and Recker only for the corner commercial buildings. So this access proposal is comparable to the Fry's Center at the Verde at Cooley Station project to the south, or to the Fry's Center at the southeast corner, and also Verde at Cooley Station to the south, which, as you can see on this screen my graphic that I have for you, it shows the existing entrance points, or the entrance points for Verde at Cooley Station that have been approved, and everything south of here that's been approved by the town through PAD deviations. So you have one into Verde at Cooley Station here on the north, and then along Record they have 2 access drives that have been approved through PAD deviations for the Verde at Cooley Station development. And then there's also one further south for the Alta Gilbert apartment complex that was approved through a PAD deviation. And then there's another one for the Verity at Cooley Station development that was actually just approved this past week through a variance process, since they weren't going through a PAD. It's just a DR case. So our hearing officer approved an entrance off of Recker Road for that site. So it's pretty clear that this is something that we have approved in the past. It is highly needed, especially for developments like this, where you don't want to push commercial traffic onto Verde Drive and Haskell Street. We want to keep those commercial customers ingressing and egressing the site off of Williams Field and Recker Road. So the next thing I wanted to show you are the cross sections. Now these cross sections are going to be updated just a little bit per some recent comments we made, but I just wanted to show you these. The applicant is choosing to kind of create their own new cross section a little bit. You can see the relationship of the street here with the buildings. The cross sections off of Williamsfield Road and Recker Road, these aren't updated all the way yet, but I just still wanted to kind of show it to you. You can see the trees and grates along Recker and Williamsfield, and you can see how close the buildings are. They're only about 19 to 20 feet away from the street, from the curb, which is per the neo-traditional standard that we're trying to create in this area. If you can see what's on the south side of Williamsfield Road, and you see those buildings, how close they are at Verde at Cooley Station to the road, the relationship they have with the street. And also we are going to be requiring, in addition to the trees, the only landscaping that will be along the frontage along Williamsfield will be pavers. I know it shows shrubs here, but this will be changed to pavers all the way to the building, all along Williamsfield Road. Along Recker Road, we may allow a little bit of landscaping in between the building and the sidewalk, but along Williamsfield, we're trying to create that neo-traditional, super pedestrian-friendly street scene. So the third request tonight is a conditional use permit. So the request for a conditional use permit is to allow ground floor residential units in the Gateway Village Center zoning district, as I stated in the beginning. There are 4 findings that need to be met, and you can see those on the screen. I know you've read this information in your staff report. But as far as those findings are concerned, I mean, number 1, that the proposed use will not be detrimental to health, safety, or general welfare of the neighborhood or persons are living or working in the vicinity, adjacent properties. Number 2, that the proposed use conforms with the purposes, intent, and policies of the general plan. And number 3, the proposed use conforms with conditions, requirements, or standards required by the code and other applicable local, state, and federal requirements. And number 4, the proposed use as conditioned would not unreasonably interfere with the use and enjoyment of nearby properties. So town staff, as we have gone through the review of this project, and we have considered every single one of these findings, town staff and the applicant both believe that the applicant is meeting these findings, as there is still plenty of commercial ground floor space and a good balance and mix of residential and commercial, with the commercial corner to create a pretty unique style mixed use development. So we feel that the amount of residential that they're proposing on the ground floor is warranted. So that, with that, oh, there's the site plan again. Just wanted to show it to you one last time. And this one's the site plan for the conditional use permit. So you'll see a little bit more detail. You can actually see in the spaces in between the buildings. You can see the amenity areas in the middle of the building spaces here. You can see the parking garages better and the parking spaces and everything like that. So as far as public participation is concerned, the applicant held a neighborhood meeting in April of last year. So this process it's been taking quite some time, and we only had one surrounding property owner attend, and they asked some general questions and didn't have any major concerns, just minor questions is what they asked. And we have received no public comments since notices have been sent out and signs posted. So we've heard nothing from the public. Staff's recommendation, we recommend that you approve or recommend that you forward a favorable recommendation to the council for approval of both the general plan amendment and the rezone case. And also we recommend that you approve the conditional use permit tonight, but with the condition that's in your staff report, as the general plan and the rezone cases are subject to the approval of the GP and rezone cases by the town council. So that's one condition. Now I wanted to call your attention before I open it up for questions and end my presentation. Just wanted to let you know that there's a few modified conditions that I wanted to bring to your attention. I just barely received this information, so I didn't have a chance to put it into your packet. Conditions number five is basically modifying the taper lengths and the width and the geometry of the decel lanes to accommodate modified decel lanes that were agreed to by our traffic engineer and by our town engineer. So that's basically what condition 5 is. It's just modifying the decel lane width and stating that the traffic study will determine the exact length of the decel lanes, which we're going to receive a revised traffic study hopefully next week before council. There's a condition for that too. Condition 6 was deleted because there is no longer a decel lane for Verde Drive from Williamsfield to Verde, so we deleted that condition. Number 7 is concerning decel lanes again, the one on Wrecker and the one on Williamsfield. So it's just geometry and taper lengths and things that those will be as described in the traffic study. And then number 18 is I added this section, this sentence or portion of a sentence at the end that the applicant needs to receive approval of a traffic study from the town engineering department prior to the case going to town council. We have reviewed the traffic study already twice, and we have some cleanup items and things that need to be addressed still, including the exhibits that show the correct decel lane lengths. So that is the only thing left that we have to review on the traffic study. So with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'm open for any questions that you have. And I believe Sean Lake should be there tonight, so he should have a presentation as well. So however you want to work it, I'm open for questions.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Anybody have any questions or comments for Keith before we invite the applicant up? Yeah, Commissioner Bianchi.
Thank you, Chairman. Keith had a couple of questions on the conditions that you've got included, because they're quite lengthy. So the condition 1 states that possible reversion of the zoning if the right-of-way dedication is not granted at record of plat or requested by the town. I don't recall seeing this condition in a while. Does town staff view this as a concern that they've included the reversion?
Chair Simon, Commissioner Bianchi, that is actually standard language that we have, and pretty much.
Language I think I used to see, but I don't think I've seen it for a while.
Yeah, yeah, it's standard language that we have in every condition
Okay.
for a zone change, that if they don't record the plats and so forth and the improvement, record the right-of-way dedications within a certain time, then it's subject to potential reversion back to the original zoning. I don't think we've actually ever done that, but it's just kind of a safety catch-all for us. It's a standard condition.
Okay. And then number 16, it says the dwelling unit max is limited to the maximum in the general plan. So I guess under the GVC category or the VC category, it's 25 to 50 dwelling units per acre. I think we're coming out at around 45 for this. So I guess my question is, can they add additional units to this if they're still within that density amount that the GP is going to allow?
Chair Simon, Commissioner Bianchi, yeah, you could assume that. Technically, they could. The general plan allows up to 50 dwelling units per acre. They're at 46, so
And I guess
they could, but they'd have to come back to us probably for an amendment to the PAD, or some type of amendment to add units, because that would change the development plan and things like that. So it's something that we would have to review, but they could propose that.
Okay, I guess where I'm going with that is, with the use permit that we've got that's going to allow for ground floor residential, are they required to do a retail or commercial portion of this? I'm wondering if they go through my concern is, they go through the review and then they say, you know, the retail's just not panning out. Could we replace that with the ground floor residential that's already been approved? And we have a use permit for.
Right. Chair Simon, Commissioner Bianchi, they'd have to go all the way back through the process if they wanted to do that. We would they would have to come in with a PAD amendment and rezone the site and come back through the whole rezoning process in order to eliminate the commercial on the corner.
Okay.
Which is something that town staff wouldn't support.
Okay, I just want to make sure we've got protections in there, considering
we do.
The use permit allowing that. I didn't know to what extent that could be expanded. And then my final question is on condition 18, it says prior to council, applicant shall address the outstanding third review comments. Do you know can you give an overview of what those third review comments are?
For sure. Chair Simon, Commissioner Bianchi, yes. So the third review comments are just clean up things on the development plan. Okay. So one of them was, and I can show you on the development plan, one of them was, I think I have it back here somewhere. Not that one, not that way, wrong direction, apologize. So the development plan, whoops, let me go back to it. Okay, so the development plan shows, they didn't have show the D-cell lanes, that the modified locations of the D-cell lanes in our third review site plan. So we've asked them to update that, and this graphic actually resolves that comment. And then the other thing is the right-of-way. We asked them for an additional 2 feet of right-of-way, half-street right-of-way along Recker and Williamsfield, to go from 46 feet of right-of-way to 48 feet. So they hadn't reflected that yet in any of the plans. The development plan, they've updated that on the development plan. As you can see here, I don't know if you can read it, but it shows 48 feet. But we're just asking them to update the rest of the plans to show 48 feet of half-street of right-of-way. So those were basically the only outstanding comments that we had left.
Okay, so they're minor. No
Pretty minor.
No concerns
Very minor.
there. All right.
No.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have questions for Keith at this point? Yeah, Commissioner Johnson.
Chair Simon, Keith, you note 61 on-street parking spaces. What's the net number of parking and the parking structures, including underground parking, versus the number of residential units proposed?
Chair Simon, Commissioner Johnson, I don't have that answer. I would refer to the applicant on that when he gives his presentation. Maybe that's a question you can ask him, but I don't know.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Keith, quick question for you, just for reference point. What is height by right in the general commercial versus height by right in Village Center?
Chair Simon, members of the commission, so the height by right in general commercial is, I believe it's 35 feet. And in Gateway Village Center, the height by right is 90 feet. This site is located in a vertical overlay district, vertical height overlay district. So they can go up to 90 feet in height
In the
for
general
certain
commercial?
uses. Not in the I don't think they can in the general commercial, but they can in this Gateway Village Center zoning.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Keith? All right, Mr. Lake, do you have a presentation you'd like to give us?
Here, I'll stop sharing.
The red light means I'm on. There we go. Actually, it's the first time at this podium. I'm used to going over there, so this will be interesting. I'm glad I didn't walk over there and get escorted over here. It's a pleasure to be before you on this property. I appreciate Keith extensively going through that project and the history and some of the things that we're asking, so I'm going to try not to duplicate. But what I wanted to do is go over some history of this property. Oh, man. I've pushed all four, but there we go. There we go. As many of you remember, this property has been planned for a very long time. And to put it in perspective, when I was a young whippersnapper attorney, fresh out of law school, working with my brand new senior partner, Ralph Pugh, I remember this being discussed. Now, at the time, I think Mr. Brennan Ray back here was probably had a name tag and knocking on doors in Barcelona. I won't say what other people were doing, but the Cooley started talking with ASU about the development of this property. It's right outside of what was transforming the Williams Air Force Base and what was going to happen and what we would do with this area. I know other people that I won't raise names got involved in the Gateway Plan project and what was going to happen for this area. But Mr. Cooley has been working not only with the town, but a lot of other agencies for many decades, quarter century, of what's going to happen here. And so the Gateway Plan was established, and then later on, after the Gateway Plan, after extensively working with the town and other people in the area about what should go here, he worked with the town to come up with the Cooley Station Plan. And the Cooley Station Plan was set in place, and this area has always been designated as something different than we see elsewhere in the town. I remember hearing things like 50 units to the acre at Recker and Williamsfield. And at the time, I don't think anything had been built over 17 units to the acre in Gilbert, and it kind of blew my mind to think 50 units to the acre at Recker and Williamsfield. This is 25 years ago that this was being discussed. But that was the plan. And the units were needed because they wanted to do something different. They wanted to create a village center at Recker and Williamsfield, which was different than we'd seen elsewhere. But the density was needed to create the village center. And I can remember Linda Edwards championing the density, and we need the density so that we can have the village center, so we can have that specialty retail. I remember the mayor now on the planning commission talking about what we're going to do differently here. So this has a history of Cooley Station for quite some time about what they would envision and what they would like to see. And Mr. Cooley has, for the most part, done a great job in carrying out that vision for this Cooley Station area, and we've seen a lot of great developments come to pass, and this is the northwest corner of that village center area. So we've seen, this is kind of an overview of things that have happened. I think Keith had a better map, but we're here to talk about the northwest corner of the village center. It was originally designated village center and Gateway Village Center zoning, but that was changed when the Fries came in. But we're trying to go back to the original plan for that village center. There we go. No. It's lagging, sorry about that. We put in some pictures so that you could see what is developed there. I know many of you probably drove by the site in preparation for this hearing, but there is density in this area. Density's been built, density on the north and on the south and on the east and on the west. There's a lot of density in the current, but we're at the very epicenter or the corner of there at Williamsfield and Recker. And so we are bringing forward what we think is a very nice, high-end type project that you haven't seen or that we haven't really seen much of in the East Valley. And so we're really excited about this project. I know Kaplan has partnered up with Vestar. It was mentioned that the commercial would be the third phase. I think Vestar is more anxious than anybody to get going, and they want to go, that might be the first phase, but to have Vestar develop that commercial right on the immediate corner and then Kaplan develop the residential around it for this mixed use development with a lot of things going on. But this is kind of what's going on in the area. You've got the Verde to the south going on. Maybe we need a new battery for this thing. You've got the Fry's Shopping Center at the southeast corner that was developed. Not exactly the same, but kind of fit architecturally with what's going on here. What we were proposing, as Keith pointed out, is to change the general plan back to Village Center and then the zoning to GVC, which was the original zoning for this site. We're not asking for a design review approval. We're showing you some elevations of what we're going to bring back, but we'll have a site plan. We do have a development plan, as the commission member brought up, that will tie certain things like density and the number of units and a lot of things that will put teeth into the town. So if we wanted to just bait and switch, we couldn't. We'd have to come back through this commission and council ultimately for changes. Again, as I pointed out, this is part of the Gateway area. It was part of the Gateway plan. It was part of the Gateway growth area. It's an area that's always been intended for this type of development, and Mr. Cooley has been extensively involved for a quarter century trying to carry out this vision or plan for a long time. So what we're proposing, I'm going to go real quick because Keith highlighted this, and I'll try to answer questions because I don't want to bore you, but it is a four-story project. We're up to about 60 feet. High. It does have a 5.5-story garage, a story and a half of which are underground, which is something unique and nice to see, to have that covered parking. I know I would like to, in a multifamily project, park in a parking structure as opposed to out on the surface and let my car heat up in the summertime. But it is a very urban design. It has a lot of glass along the front. But at the same time, it incorporates those Cooley Station elements of the brick and the stone that have become kind of a trademark for that Cooley area. We didn't want to just go all glass, which is a different area of town. Cooley has a lot of that red brick and a lot of that stone and a lot of different materials in addition to the glass. And so that's the deviation of the code that we feel is important so we can fit what has been the plan for a quarter century and the design for that, and working with Mr. Cooley to make sure it fits in the area and it looks like it belongs here at Cooley. The project, again, will bring a site plan back before the town, but it's going to have some very high-end uses, multiple buildings throughout, access off of the collector streets for the residential, and then access off of the arterial streets for the commercial on the corner. It will be a mixed use of uses on the corner as well. You'll have a lot of retail along the front. But the amenities within the project that you'll see when we bring the site plan and the landscape plan and the elevations back in the DRB process will be extensive. So I'm not going to go through them, but you can see they're not looking to skimp on any of this, but will be a very nice high-end project. Large clubhouses, fitness centers, WeWork space, pet spas, conference center, all the things that you would come to expect to see in a project such as this. Compactor, trash, sustainable. I mean, there are some sustainable elements. I think we put in our narrative a list of sustainable elements of this project. Here's a list of some of those things. That's kind of important now. I think we're starting to look more and more at the sustainable features of projects than we used to, and so Kaplan is working on that as well and has listed a lot of things that are sustainable with this project. And again, I'm not going to go through all of these, but you see those on your screen. The sustainability of this project as well. I clicked it. There we go. The commercial on the corner That's a Vestar project. They're chomping at the bit. They want to go. The retail was brought out to the street, so you have the buildings out on the street with the parking behind, which I think is the plan, not only for the Cooley Station area, but the town likes to see that type of design as well. Pedestrian connectivity throughout the project, not only around the residential, along the streets, but to the commercial as well. So they've thought through many of these elements and worked extensively with staff. Sorry about this. I'm going to flip through these because I think I'm losing you. Here's some of the architectural renderings of what it would be. Like I said, we'll be bringing back elevations with a design review case. But here's some of the architectural renderings. You can see how they've tried to incorporate the elements of the Cooley Station plan, but still try to address that glazing requirement of the town at the same time. So we think this is an excellent project. Keith went through it extensively, went through the deviations to the code. The staff report and our narrative went through it in detail. We think this will be a very high-end, nice, high-quality project. It has the mixed-use design. It fits the original intent. It fits the density of the original intent for this area. We think it is going to be something that will really be an asset and a gem for the town, and we would hope that you would support the project. We support the conditions of approval and be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lake. Anybody have questions or comments for Mr. Lake? No? Nobody? You did a wonderful job. I do have one question, and I know that we're not doing design review, but I'm going to throw it out there just because it's been thrown out a couple different times. Off of Haskell, is there a reason why we're not looking at an entry into the parking garage off Haskell and only an internal drive? Is that just a design?
I think that's just the design of the garage.
Okay. Just might be something to think about. I'm just kind of throwing it out there. And then the other thing, again, a design review thing, because that's where my brain goes with these sorts of things. We talk about a neo-traditional look on this and limited panes of glass on the front. Would we be looking at some type of brownstone type development around it? And you don't necessarily need to answer that at this point, but.
we can look at that, and we're trying to balance those two things.
Okay. Otherwise, I don't have any other questions for you at this time, unless somebody else has questions. No? All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I don't have any comment cards from community at this time, so we will, unless there's any other questions for staff, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, bring it back up to the dais for conversation. And
Jan?
motion. Yeah.
Sorry to interject.
Yep.
I just wanted to, real quick, correct something I stated earlier. I stated that upon this once, I can't remember which commissioner asked the question about the max height in the
that was
general.
Me.
Okay.
That was me.
That was you? Okay, good. Yep. The max height, I was mistaken. The max height in general commercial is 45 feet. Okay. I said 35, so I just wanted to correct myself.
Okay.
And get that on the record. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Keith. Okay, so we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, bring it up to the dais. Any discussion or conversation around this? We will need a couple of different motions on this, so we'll need one for the general plan and one, and zoning, I believe we can do together. Is that correct? No, we need to do one for each, all three? Okay, so we would need separate motions for all three, but if there's any discussion at this point. Commissioner Munt.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, I think that since Keith clarified that it was 45, not 35, that everything seems to be in order. I actually like this project. I think it does fit into the character area, and I think it's something that's needed. And I like that they did a nice parking garage and actually put it underground so as to actually have parking versus coming in and asking for variances of a lot less. And I think that the staff, I know Keith has worked extensively on dealing with a lot of the comments we had. And, it seems as though it's answered, and I like the look and feel of it. So for me, I think this is a good project.
All right. Thank you, Vice Chair. Anybody else? Yeah, Commissioner Bianchi.
Thank you, Chair. I guess general comments. I don't know, it seems the limitation of some of these residential wraparounds looks to be the potential lack of commercial development, just possibly within that complex. I know one of my original concerns was the loss of the general commercial zoning, but I think with the GC zoning, it appears compatible with the adjacent uses and it provides the commercial space within the complex. And It's also with the adjacent uses and the adjacent retail coming online. I think that concern's been addressed in my mind. And as well as we got the assurance that the retail portion will be protected, I'm in favor of the case tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? I'm going to actually just state myself on this. I actually agree with Commissioner Bianchi on this. I would definitely like to make sure that we protect that retail and the commercial space on it. I do feel like we're not in a design review, but I feel like there's some really cool things that could be built within this, and I think that will come out, but within that design review case. But with regards to the zoning and the general plan amendment, I would definitely be in favor of this and the use permit. So I'm okay with it, but I'll entertain a motion unless there's any other conversation or discussion. Commissioner Johnson, did you have something you'd like to add?
Actually, this could be covered in design review, but I like this concept of a design that has a really attractive streetscape. People view the city along cars. And when you drive along and you see a design like this, and again, this is for design review, you want something that's really articulated and attractive and really invites you into the property. And I think if they hold firm on this conceptual design to create this sort of concept where it's a very attractive, articulated surface, both in terms of structure as well as color, I think it's going to be a very attractive addition to Cooley Station. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I would agree. Discussion or motion?
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve item number 11, GP 22-14, District at Cooley Station.
All right, we've got a recommendation for approval of item 11 by the Vice Chair. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Commissioner Davis, although we're going to vote. And motion carries 7-0. Do I have a motion on item 12?
Sure thing, Chairman. Carrying on with my other motion, I'd like to make a motion to approve item number 12, Z 22-14, District at Cooley Station.
All right, I've got a motion to recommend approval for item 12. Do I have a second? Or by the Vice Chair, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Davis, second, and we'll cast. All right, motion carries 7-0. And do I have a motion on item 13?
Why not? Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve item number 13, UP 22-54, District at Cooley Station.
I have a motion to recommend approval of item 13. Do I have a second?
I'll second that one as well.
I have a second by Commissioner Davis. Please cast your vote. And item passes, motion carries 7-0. All right, thank you. Thanks for coming out and presenting. We'll go on to item number 14. And Kristen, I believe you're up for this one. We've got DR 22-176, Mutt's Canine Cantina.
And Chairman, I was the one that had questions. If you don't need a full presentation, I'm fine. I can just ask questions.
Okay. Does anybody want a full presentation on this one? No, we're good? All right. So Commissioner Bianchi, we'll go ahead and jump straight to you. I don't have any public comment cards, so we'll let you ask your questions.
Thank you, Chair. Kristen, I guess my question is, in regards to the design is, I'm curious about the fence line on the dog park along Santan Village Parkway. I think it says it's 6 feet. It's not completely screened. It looks like it's slatted mesh. And then it's also going to have kind of a string of lights along the street. Is there any other screening from the roadway, or is it just going to be this visible from Santan Parkway?
Chair Simon, Commissioner Bianchi, it is just that visible. It's your traditional dog park style fencing. And then they do have the string lighting that goes along the top of that fencing. And then you have the perimeter landscaping between Santan Village, Parkway, and the site itself, but that's all there is.
Okay, but no other screening or anything. You can, it'll be visible from the
Yes.
street. Okay, thank you.
That's it? Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions for Kristen? No?
I'll just make the comment that I really like the name and that I think dogs need more cantinas.
All right, thank you, Kristen. Does anybody need a presentation by the applicant on this? No? And I don't have any public comment cards, so we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. We'll bring it back up to the dais for any conversation or a motion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Commissioner Bianchi.
I guess where I'm on this is, because I know it seems pretty straightforward. To me, it just looks like we're introducing an animal or pet-centric use in a very high-traffic area with no complementary uses and shared parking. I know we've got two dog parks in the close vicinity, but I know that's really not a consideration. Design-wise and site plan, it's interesting to me that the patio area is located completely opposite of where the dog parks are, which seems to kind of defeat the purpose just to me. The trash enclosure is probably away from the restaurant area, probably for a good reason if they're dealing with animal waste and things like that. But I guess my big concern is with that extensive vehicle traffic along Santan and just with a wire fence, and then we're going to add a string lights along there. I'm just worried about the distraction there, especially along the curve. So that's my overall concern. So this, for me, it just kind of, it seems to be raising more questions than it's answering for me. So that's just my opinion on the case.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Or discussion, I should say. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Chairman, I would like to make a motion to approve item 14, DR 22-176, Mutts K-9 Cantina.
All right, we have a motion by the vice chair to approve item 14. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Commissioner Johnson. Go ahead and open up polling. Cast your vote. And item carries 6-1 with the Commissioner Bianchi as the dissenting vote. Sorry. All right, thank you. We'll move on to item 15, DR 22-127, Madera Gilbert and Noah. You are up.
Chair Simon, Planning Commission. I'm presenting DR 22-127, Madera Gilbert. It's a multifamily and commercial project being proposed at the southwest corner of Ray Road and Higley Road. It's about a 15.5 acre site encompassing general commercial, multifamily, medium, and shopping center uses. This design review case pertains to the general commercial and multifamily medium areas and a master site plan encompassing the shopping center area as well. This is a case that was given to you in a study session last month at the February 1 hearing. And so what I will try to do is skip through most of the basic site details and move into some of the changes that have been made in response to Planning Commission feedback and in continued review by town staff. But just to really quickly orient you to the site once again, it's a 4-building site. You have 2 loft above commercial buildings along Ray Road. They're 4 stories. And then you have 2 multifamily buildings that are with a range of amenities on the north side of them. Those are mostly 3 stories with small 4-story sections of those buildings along the pedestrianized street through the middle of the development. And then again, you're kind of creating a small grid of streets with kind of pedestrianized street concepts within it. This will be 276 units, 19,000 approximately square feet of commercial and retail tenant space, and some open spaces to complement the uses on the site. Just showing you what that site plan looks like in context, just to get your mind thinking a little bit about what we're talking about. This is the view from the corner of Ray and Banning Roads. Those are the loft above buildings that are along Ray Road. This is the central street through the middle of the development, looking from the west at the intersection of Banning and Megan Streets into the development. This is just another view from the middle of the development. Those are just meant to kind of get you thinking about what this looks like potentially once built. We've discussed landscaping plans a little bit, so I'm going to go through them and instead focus on the response to study session comments that were left, since the primary comments that were left by Planning Commission were related to landscaping and then to traffic and site circulation. Looking at the open spaces, a comment was made that the dog park was much too small for the function on this site, and so that dog park has been expanded to about 1,000 square feet. So it meets those minimal functional standards we like to see in dog parks. There's actually best practices guides about these types of things, and so we tried to refer to some guidance and work with the applicant to get something suitable there. The courtyards were mentioned that heat impacts could be an issue. Shading has been made to be greater than 50% of the area under either shade canopies or trees, and so we deem that those comments have been addressed. The shared street concept in the middle on number 3, there were comments about if that drive aisle may be hindering the ability for movement between commercial uses on the site. That shared street concept is actually there. It's not just a street with curbs and just asphalt. It's a separate paving type that has a curbless design and more bollards and planters dividing the vehicle space from pedestrian space. And then it has lighting that's at more of a pedestrian scale, again, trying to encourage more circulation between those uses. And there's some unobstructed areas where parking is not present to allow for flow between those two sides of that shared street concept. Removing that aisle, as was suggested by a commissioner, potentially would result in real issues when it comes to traffic circulation on the site that planning staff and traffic had some concerns with. The irrigation concern related to water and landscaping, they've decided to drop their initial desire to move on to town potable for irrigation water, and instead will continue with the reclaimed water that's serviced by the homeowners association, and that this property is currently tied to that reclaimed water system because of an ordinance from, I believe, 2006 that again, they're required to be serviced by that reclaimed water. There should be more there, but we'll keep going. Just looking at grading and drainage, since we didn't visit it in the study session, and I thought it was important to visit here, you have underground storage tanks kind of following the perimeter of the site, and you'll see those just detailed here on this plan. And then I put this bottom half of the drawing on this slide as well, just showing that this will be there'll be large underground chambers around the southwestern and northern sides of the development, and you can see that storm drain system running throughout the site, and this has been deemed sufficient by engineering to manage the runoff on the site. The shopping center parcels will have a very small temporary basin there, and they will need to do additional improvements on those sites when future projects in the shopping center zoning district come in. But the primary issues that were addressed or were brought up on this site had to do with traffic and circulation. It's been a subject of public comment, and it has been a subject of town staff concern as well. The traffic study had previously been returned for corrections in town reviews due to a variety of challenges. There were level of service grade issues, both existing with any no-build scenario, but also exacerbated by the development itself for specific traffic movements without those mitigating measures we'd like to see in the traffic report. Some missing improvements and changes that were referenced in the traffic report that weren't referenced in the site design and off-site improvements. Changes to the driveways for queuing and alignment of existing streets, striping, really just general traffic comments, things that we really dig into as town staff. These adjustments have been made by the applicant since were addressed in a study session last month. There's increased turn lane lengths on Ray Road. Those are brought up to town standards and what the town traffic engineers deemed appropriate on that turn lane. The driveway at Megan Street on the western side of the development has been aligned to avoid offset driveways and those increased traffic conflicts that can create accidents over time. Traffic on Banning Street and some issues with site circulation were minimized by creating egress-only movement on the west side of the development, so that gate is exit-only, and so that reduces one direction of travel on Banning Street, and also mitigates the problems that we had with queuing and the potential of backup onto public streets to the west of the development. There's the increased left turn lane improvements on the southeastern driveway of the development. So on Higley Road looking northbound, that has been increased to 150 feet, and town staff has worked on off-site improvements that have been suggested to ensure proper storage and taper lengths there. And then the queuing has been managed through dual striping on egress points on driveways throughout the development, on making sure that all the driveways are functioning as they should with the traffic study. There's been a lot of details worked out with Clint and Aaron and myself with the applicant to ensure that that traffic study, that its recommendations are in line with being approved by the town traffic engineer and are meeting all town standards. There's another comment that I want to note, and that is the Ray and Higley improvements, which have been a subject of a lot of conversation and were brought up in the study session last month. It requires dual lefts and signal improvements to meet level of service requirements or anything that's deemed appropriate by the town traffic engineer. So we discussed whether this was something that was under this design review case or the zoning case, which was approved in December 2022. And looking at the ordinance language that you'll see on your screen, that was primarily related to a zoning stipulation. So the developer, we've been trying to interpret this language. Ultimately, this is something, the responsibility between the town and the developer will be worked out prior to the approval of building permits, the certificate of occupancy in those later stages of the construction document as detailed in the zoning ordinance. Given that it doesn't affect condition I, which is that final traffic study improvement, or traffic study approval, I'm sorry, for this project that is required for any design review approval, the improvements at Ray and Higley for the dual lefts and the mitigation measures that are necessary to improve conditions from failing grades there, those still have to happen regardless of any of what happens in that traffic study. So again, it's largely that conversation needs to continue to happen. Town staff or the town has some responsibility in that because the improvements at that corner were removed a number of years ago and would have to be replaced. And so the specific responsibilities between town staff, the town and the developer are being worked out. But that doesn't impact the approval of the traffic study, which has gotten an approved stamp from the town traffic engineer now that the review has been completed. In addition to the traffic study, there is a parking study that was requested following the study session and concerns by commissioners that parking was not sufficient on the site. So by raw count, the parking is sufficient. There's 660 spaces, and based on floor area in units, there's 643 spaces that are required. This means that there's no spaces off-site, such as on Megan Street, Banning Street, some of the neighborhood streets in the Lionsgate subdivision that are relied upon to meet these parking requirements. But where the problem came up, as mentioned last month, was in the parking distribution. So in the table on the bottom right of the slide that you'll see that there is the underground parking area, the secured lot area, and the public lot area. And the issue that we had is that the underground parking dedicated for multifamily units in buildings 1 and 2 was, and I apologize, there's a flip-flop number there in 2 cells. There's the number 80 should be for the underground parking. Those 80 stalls of underground parking don't fully, quote-unquote, self-park all the parking necessary for the units in those 2 buildings. You'll see the total parking demand is 112. In that secured lot area to the south, there's 294 spaces, but we'd like to see 385 in a fully self-parked scenario. Self-parked, again, being that all these units have their parking spaces in a secured area. But then the area of the public lot access around the other buildings has a much higher number of parking spaces allotted than is required for just, say, the commercial areas.
Hey, Noah.
Yes.
Can you back up and explain that again? That kind of went right over my head on the parking.
Yes.
With the numbers being mixed up, I just lost you there.
Chair Simon, I apologize for the error on the slide. I'm happy to walk through it again. The underground parking area has 80 spaces in that parking garage. By code, if you parked all of the units in those two buildings for their total parking, you would have 112 spaces that would be required in that garage. In the secured lot area, so to the south of those buildings, numbers 3 and 4, the large multifamily buildings, you would have 385 spaces to fully quote-unquote self-park. Every space that's required for every bedroom, for example, with how we do our code. And they provide 294 in that area. And then the public access area, which we would normally see used to park, say, the commercial uses, the non-residential uses, that would be 146 spaces to park all those uses. And you see there's 284 spaces that are out in that public area that are not gated in any way, shape, or form. So when we looked at this as planning staff, we wanted to get a parking study to ensure that with this arrangement, we weren't running into problems where that public parking area, especially for the commercial uses, was going to run out and cause overflow onto neighboring streets and cause problems for neighbors. It's been a concern brought up by neighbors as well, and so we wanted to do our due diligence in investigating this. So the applicant provided a parking study for us. So looking at at this table here from the parking study, and I don't want to just dump the entire parking study on you in a presentation, but I do want to just provide some basic numbers from the ITE demand counts and then from the ULI shared parking model that they used. Both models show that even at the peak of demand for the uses that are on the site, there shouldn't be any overflow onto surrounding properties, that it should be fully maintained in the site because that peak demand never exceeds the total number of spaces that are allotted on the site. That's 643 spaces. But again, we wanted to look a layer deeper and make sure that we weren't ever going to have an issue where there was going to be overflow because there was too much of a demand placed on those public access areas, those non-gated areas, because they're not fully self-parking those residential spaces, and we could see some overlap from the residential uses into those public access areas. What I'm showing you here is the shared parking calculations for weekdays and weekends, just showing that maximum parking demand that's calculated at any given time based on that shared model is never exceeds the total amount of spaces on the site. That's 643. Given the hours of the day, at the peak conflict, which you would see according to their study at 8 p.m., which is when you would have commercial activity and residential activity happening kind of at peak at the same time, you still see that only reaching about still having about 100 spaces to work with on the site, 80 to 100, in kind of a worst case scenario. What we really wanted to focus on were the 3 columns in red. And the reason why I highlight these is because it shows that the total parking for the residential area, the residential spaces, exceeds what is allotted in the that is allotted in those secured areas and may slightly rely on the areas outside of the gates in the kind of public access areas. And you'll see that those, again, to kind of clarify, the resident suburban that you're seeing there and that's guest spaces, you'll see exceed that, get up over 380 and start to create a situation where, based on the 290 spaces in the rear lot and 80 spaces in the underground lot, that demand is going to rely on a few of those spaces outside of the gated areas. Because this only happens in the middle of the night, you'll see the 3 squares I created were around midnight on weekdays and weekends, and then on weekends around 6 a.m. We believe that there will still be enough parking to accommodate those residential uses on the site, just because those are also the times when the commercial demand is lowest. And so those public access areas should have the greatest degree of capability to support a handful of spaces being allocated to those residential units at those hours of the day. I'm happy to walk through that again. I know that can be a little bit confusing just because of the really unique parking arrangement on the site. But the planning staff has looked at this pretty closely and found that we shouldn't have any hours of the day where we see a real kind of red alert level of parking demand on those public areas where you would start to see that parking pushed out into surrounding neighborhoods, onto other lots, things like that. And then I'll just close by going back to the design of the site and just showing you the elevations once again. You'll just see that these have largely remained constant through the design. These are the loft above buildings. This is building 1 nearest the Banning Street and Ray Road intersection. This is building 2. These are the 2 multifamily buildings. You're seeing them side by side with the frontage that they'll create in that front view. So that's what it would look like side by side, all down that internal pedestrian drive. And then that view on the bottom is what you'd see from the rear. Set back very far from Dublin Street, but that's the side that's facing that area. And then here's the remainder of the elevations for those multifamily buildings in the rear of the development. Here's the color and materials board. The red boxes just indicate slight changes that were made. There was a painted fiber cement board introduced, a painted concrete that was additionally provided by the applicant, and then the veneer type changed ever so slightly. The sample they used changed just a little bit. Everything else remained constant from the last February 1 study session. I'll close with just a couple perspectives, just showing you the proposal with this additional perspective, showing that rear view from the neighborhood in the back. This is from that landscape setback in the rear of the development. Ultimately, based on the improvements made by the applicant, the approved traffic study, the approved parking study, and the approved overall design review, staff moves to approve DR 22-127 Madera Gilbert for the 15.5 acres at the southwest corner of Ray and Higley Roads, subject to conditions. I do want to note that there's one additional condition that I have to add here for consideration, and it's just an airport overflight overlay condition that's just required for any residential development that's located in that overflight area number 3. And so it's just an additional conditions with the disclosure and covenant language that we require on those projects. So with that, I will turn it over to the commission for discussion. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Noah at this point? Commissioner Bianchi.
Thank you. No, I think it came up in study session, and I noted it tonight. So has the HOA given their approval or acceptance for the project's reclaimed water usage yet? I think that had to be done by the HOA.
Commissioner Bianchi, Chair Simon, there is this is a rather complex topic for the town. This is a ordinance and development agreement that was created that is between the HOA and property owners. The town is not a party in that agreement. So there's largely anything working that out between the HOA and the developer has to be done between private parties. Right now, they were originally pushing to go on to town potable systems for irrigation, and they've decided to rescind that request and go with the HOA reclaimed water because they're in that district, and to leave that district, you would have to amend the ordinance that created that reclaimed water district and the map that is recorded that shows where the properties that are a part of that ordinance and subsequent development agreement. I believe that Lauren Hickson is actually on the line, who can also explain a little bit more about the reclaimed water system and the fact that the town and this design review case have actually very little to do with the outcome of that reclaimed water situation. Lauren, are you on the line? Is Lauren on?
Yeah,
Lauren,
I guess my concern is I just don't want to be creating another problem with our potential approvals, that if it's still an issue, that's troublesome with the HOA.
It is. The preliminary assessment that was provided by the applicant showed that their water demand, which is fairly minimal because this only has to do with irrigation water, it doesn't have to do with any drinking water, water run to units, things like that, is fairly minor and shouldn't exceed the capacity that already exists in the system. However, any infrastructure improvements that are required for that do have to be worked out between the homeowners association and the developer. The town does not have any role in that development agreement, and we can't condition anything anything in that because we could be potentially getting ourselves involved in negotiations that the town is not party to.
Okay, understood. Yeah, and maybe the applicant speak to that too. And then my next question was just trash enclosures located, it's a large site. I'm just seeing 4 on the site plan. With these larger kind of wraparound, this almost looks like a wraparound project too. Commissioner Anderson might know what these types of projects, but I'm just wondering, I'm only seeing 4 trash enclosures. Where's the other waste and where's that hauled off in these types of larger developments?
Commissioner Bianchi, there are the 4 there, and I know that commercial tenants play a significant role in using those because of their location in the public area. I'll leave it to the applicant to potentially speak to their trash arrangement. Sometimes with the private services, those arrangements are a little bit more complex with the potential for off-site and things like that. So I'll leave that to the applicant to describe.
That's fair. I was just curious looking at that. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments for Noah at this point? No?
Well, yes.
Oh, Commissioner Fay.
No, I have a question. The no ingress, or egress, or I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, on the Banning exit. If I looked at this correctly, you can egress and ingress. You can come onto the site off Banning. You just can't leave the secured parking lot, or you can't get into the secured parking lot, but you can get in and out of the whole commercial property, right?
Commissioner Fay, Chair Simon, that's correct. The gate itself on that side, on that western side, is the egress only. There will be ingress and egress out of that driveway there. When I said mitigating the traffic flow on that side, part of that has to do with by limiting that dual access gate there, for example. Banning is relied upon less as a potential circulation route for entering into the development for residents, particularly in that part of the development.
It seems like a dubious improvement or a dubious mitigation. You can still come in and out. You can still get onto the property. If you want to park in the secured parking, you just have to go all the way around. It seems like at best what we're doing is we're creating an inconvenience and hoping that causes people to drive on the arterials around.
Commissioner Fay, part of that is also by code. They would have to have greater separation from the from Banning and have a deeper driveway length, for example, to have an ingress and egress gate there. If you can imagine the queuing situations, if you had an ingress gate there, that actually wouldn't meet town code standards as well. So we see it as a little bit of it's a code requirement that they'd have to shift that, but there's also the ancillary benefit that we considered when thinking about it from a traffic perspective. But they can't do an ingress-egress gate there because of the queuing backup and the violation of town traffic standards. That would be
Yeah, I'm not advocating for a gate at the property line. I'm wondering what the value is of this gate inside, but I mean, I guess that once it's inside, that starts to become a business decision, and it seems dubious from a mitigation standpoint, almost a little bit weird, but I guess that's a business decision. Okay, that does answer my, it is what I thought it was then.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Noah, can you go back to the parking for me? Your first graph there. This one here. With regards to the number, you've got 660 spaces provided on site, 643 required. In the underground parking, you've got 80, correct?
Mhm.
And by study, you thought 112. My only concern here is, and I don't know that I necessarily have a question, and this may be something that Mr. Ray can address. My only concern would be that those underground parking spots would end up being paid spots, which would then potentially reduce the overall number of available spots for parking, which is what the parking study is based upon, is available spots. So it's just kind of a thought, I guess, on top of my head.
Chair Simon, that's a valid concern and one the applicant may be able to speak to better. I know that the goal is to create at least one secured space for every unit and additional ones that can be available. I know they have a garage amenity in that southeast corner with just a couple spaces, so there probably is the opportunity for a paid arrangement, but the specifics of that could be spoken to by the applicant, Brendan Ray, or a representative from Mill Creek Residential.
All right, thank you. I don't have any other questions at this time. Unless anybody else does, we'll go to Mr. Ray if he's got a presentation he'd like to give.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission. Brennan Ray, 1850 North Central, here on behalf of Mill Creek Residential. This group has had the opportunity to see this a number of times recently, and so with your permission, I will forego a presentation that would essentially say exactly what Noah has said this entire time and reiterate a lot of what I said during the zoning case that was heard before you all last year. So with that, I'd like to just kind of go to some of the comments and questions. One of the things that I will tell you, I know we spent a lot of time talking about parking. Mill Creek has been building residential developments for more than 30 years. They have experience over 1 million square feet of commercial developments. They have the experience, the know-how, the expertise to ensure that there is appropriate parking, not only for the commercial, but for the residential as well. The last thing that any developer wants is to be underparked, so that the customers who will be coming to the retail won't have opportunities to park, and likewise that the residents who attend or who live in this community will not have an opportunity to park. And so Noah's absolutely right. We've gone round and round and have had numerous discussions with them concerning this parking situation. And we are confident that what we have presented and the way it's going to work, including Jamie Blakeman from Lokahi Group as well. She's the one that prepared the parking study, that there is more than sufficient parking to service this type of development. I will tell you that every multifamily unit, be they in the buildings on the north along Ray Road or the ones, the main part, will have an assigned parking space. So everyone will have an assigned parking space in that regard. There was, I believe, lots of comments about traffic. I don't know if there was any specific question for me to answer relative to that. I know there was a comment about trash. I know that in terms of enclosures, we believe we've got the appropriate amount sized per industry standards for the amount of commercial and the residential uses. There are 5 enclosures, individual dumpsters that are located what I'll call outside the gates, and behind the gates there are 2 enclosures, one in the southwest portion of the site and the other in the southeast portion of the site is where those enclosures are. And so as we've looked at it, we believe that we've got sufficient capacity for people to throw their trash away, be they in the residential or commercial development. There might be more that I missed in it, but I know those were the 2 items as I was listening and taking notes that I thought I needed to come up and respond to. But we are excited. We've worked very diligently with staff on this development. A lot of late afternoon calls with staff, them reviewing things timely for us, and our team responding to those comments that we believe this is kind of one of the last patches on the patchwork quilt in this area to be filled in. And we believe that design, the quality, the mixed-use nature of the development is commensurate with the expectations for this area for Agritopia, and we'd request your approval. Again, happy to answer any additional questions you all might have. If I'm unable to, I've got various team members here that I might need to pull up and pinch hit for me.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the applicant at this time? No? All right, we have no questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do have one comment card from community, so I've got Samara Figueroa. So if you'd like to come up, I'll give you 3 minutes. And please state your name and your residence.
Hi, good evening. My name is Samara Figueroa. I live in the Lionsgate community. Did you need my specific address? Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for this opportunity. I've been a resident here for about 15 years, so it's such an honor to be here. At any rate, I wanted to express myself. I put it down on paper. It's just a little easier for me to express what I've been wanting to tell the commissioners for a number of days. At any rate, as you know, I'm here for the Moderna apartment complex, and like they touched about a couple other subjects that I was concerned about, of course, was the traffic and the parking, as well as just the safety of it all. I feel like it's this crammed, this little a small portion of a community that they're trying to cram everything in. At any rate, I'm just going to go ahead and read this. It's a little easier for me. So my biggest concern with this construction is the traffic survey. When I was reading this today, it said that Higley and Ray still needs to be improved before they would even consider building. To me, that seems like such a far-fetched thing to try to do that to accommodate this apartment or this mixed-use project. At any rate, and the anticipation of that to take place is not going to occur until the year 2025 to even up to 2030. So meanwhile, all the residents in that area, or even just ongoing traffic, have to deal with that. I just feel like it's just very unfair and a lot to accommodate for this small mixed-use project that can be taken elsewhere. And my second concern was the parking. I was told by Noah that there's one parking spot per for each apartment unit. I don't know about you, but I don't know of one household that has one apartment unit, one vehicle for their house. I myself have the smallest house in my community, and I have 3 vehicles in my house. So I think one parking spot per unit is not going to be sufficient. There's definitely going to be an overflow into the residential area which I live in. And so I come up here telling you this, and I only had 3 minutes, but I do have some suggestions. Perhaps they're far-fetched, but they're my suggestions, and I want to be heard. So the first one is to relocate it. I know there was the vote from 7-0, but nothing has been built. I mean, that's still a consideration. I drive around the city of Gilbert, and I see many, many vacant slots. I mean, I know the one on Williamsville and Record was just taken, but there's others like Power and Warner. I mean, you go down Higley, there's several other sites that can be taken. Well, we're trying to just cram all this project into the small amount of space. It just doesn't even seem right. At any rate, the next thing, number 2, was to shift the project utility into shopping only or apartments only to accommodate that corner. It already has apartments on 2 other corners there. And alone, just in the Lionsgate community, there's 1,900 people that live there. That's not even Cooper and Agrotopia or the other apartments on the other corner. I don't know, there's nearly 8,000 just traffic people that like, what's the word I'm thinking of, where the flow, there's many people go through that intersection every day. There's more than 8,000 based on the survey, and that just seems immense to me. Anyways, the third suggestion I would have, just to reduce the number of the apartments or the stores there. The fourth one, which is my number 1 request, if they would just fence the thing out in some way. I heard it was gated. I don't know the specifics of how it's gated, but that would really make the Lionsgate community very happy, I believe, if they had a gate that would pool all the cars or vehicles into Higley and Ray instead of on Banning and Megan. Because we're tax-paying, we're HOA, we pay to live there. And it's like an invasion of our privacy, invasion of our peace. I can't even, in the mornings, I don't even currently, it takes me nearly 15 minutes just to get to the high school to drop off my kids.
Hey, if you could wrap it up, I'm sorry.
Sure, no problem. That was the end of it. Thank you for hearing me out. I appreciate your time. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you for coming out this evening. Mr. Ray, would you like to address any of those concerns?
Chair, members of the commission, with respect to traffic, I heard Ms. Figueroa make a comment about Higley and Ray, and I believe that was something that Noah discussed at the end of his presentation. I'm happy to go into more details if I need to on that, but needless to say, as Noah indicated, traffic has been one of the main topics as we've gone through this entire process. We've had probably more conversations than Clint wants to have with us, but nevertheless, we've had a lot of conversations because we want to ensure that this is a safe development, meets the town's code and criteria, and that we're mitigating any potential impacts this new development will have on the adjacent streets. Again, with respect to the parking, I'm not entirely clear what we have. As I mentioned, we have one assigned space per unit, but in total, as we look throughout this entire development, there are approximately 1.85 spaces per unit, which is what town code would require as an average. So again, I think we've talked to that at length. I'm happy to talk with Ms. Figueroa offline about the fencing, as was indicated when we went through the zoning case. This is an entire, the residential portion has not a solid fence, but a fence all the way around it on Banning and on Dublin, so there are no vehicular connections nor pedestrian connections to Banning or Dublin from the residential, directly from the residential development. So again, happy to answer any additional questions, but we'd request your approval.
All right, thank you.
I don't think that's correct. I mean, you can get directly out from the residential parking onto Banning. You just can't get in. Is that correct?
Through the chair, Commissioner Fay, what I mean to say is that, yes, there is the access point at Banning that aligns with Megan, but in terms of around the perimeter, the bulk of the multifamily, and if I got to walk over there to be able to point to it, I'm more than happy to do that. But there is no direct access from either of those two residential buildings, either directly to Banning or directly to Dublin. They would need to exit out and go through the designated access points out onto Banning that's indicated up there in kind of the northeast portion of the site. There is that access point. And if someone wants to walk out of the gated community, there are public sidewalks that would allow them to do that. What I mean to say is that there is no direct access from what I'll call the L that wraps those buildings from those to Banning or to Dublin.
But there is. I mean, as long as you go through that gate kind of in the north, that gate right there just inside the Banning, you can get out of the L perfectly easily onto Banning. I mean, nobody cares about the walking, but you can, if you're parked on the west side of the site, you can just drive right out that gate onto Banning, can't you?
Yeah, I think we're talking two different things.
Are we?
Through the
Okay.
chair, Commissioner Fay. I'm happy to, I beg your indulgence, I'm just going to walk over here.
Am I doing this wrong?
So what I was indicating is you are correct. People have an ability to drive out of here. What I am saying is that along this perimeter right here, which is along Banning, and along this south perimeter, along Dublin, there is no access, there is no penetrations, there is no nothing through these. There is this access point here, but again, through here and along here, if you were to look at the wall plan, that is entirely fenced off, and there are no pedestrian gates nor vehicular gates.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't think there's a road to the south, is there? I mean, I guess it might someday be, but, all right, okay, I get it. Good enough.
All right. Any other questions or comments? No? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Noah, I do have a question for you. If you could address, Ms. Figueroa had a question with regards to improvements on Higley and Ray. Can you just address what she's referring to really quickly?
Sure, happy to do so. And Ms. Figueroa, thank you for being here this evening, and I thank you for being part of the process with Madeira Gilbert. In regards to the Higley and Ray improvements, this is something that does have to be done prior to any certificate of, could I get this turned back on potentially? Thank you. Sorry, I'm going to go here, back to the ordinance language here. When it is a little bit confusing, and maybe I wasn't as articulate as I could have been in describing this. The improvements at Ray and Higley don't involve ripping up the entire intersection and rebuilding it. It's not a wholesale improvement. It requires the installation of dual lefts, which doubles that carrying capacity for left turns, which is needed to get that grade up to a non-failing grade for level of service to pass, basically. And this was talked about at length during the zoning case last year, and it was determined that again, prior to any certificate of occupancy, the improvements need to be completed to create those dual lefts. That involves striping, so restriping that, which there is room for it right now because it did exist as a dual left from the mid-2000s to about 2014 when the town removed those improvements and brought it to a single left. So that needs to be restriped, and there could be potential pole and signal improvements that determined by the town traffic engineer to make that a dual left. And so that does have to be completed. Where I think the confusion may have come from is that there is discrepancy, because you'll notice in the town ordinance language, it says that at the developer's expense, but there's a back and forth in terms of who is responsible for what because of the fact that the town removed it. The specifics of that are built into that ordinance piece. All of that can be determined by the town traffic engineer, and we've continued to work with them. But that does need to be completed prior to any sort of certificate of occupancy, so before the completion of this project. We couldn't procrastinate that to 2030, for example, and I think where that comes from is the confusion around the 2025 and 2030 scenarios in the traffic study, which admittedly can be really confusing. And just ensuring that it's clear that those scenarios have to be mitigated with the inclusion of the dual lefts that were included in the original ordinance. That's always been on the radar. The traffic study was part of the zoning case. It was an attachment. This has been an ongoing conversation. It does have to be done, but the responsibility still needs to be worked out.
Thank you. All right, any other questions for staff or the applicant at this point? No? Commissioner Johnson?
Chairman Simon, no, there's something that was really interesting raised by Ms. Figueroa, which I think we really need to explore. The issue of a factor of 1.85 or any other mathematical factor for parking, I think it merits further review. The commission and the council approve a variety of multifamily units that include parking based on certain factors. I think it would be interesting empirically to look at some of the things that the commission and the council approve that are multifamily units, whether indeed there is a bleeding into off-street parking, and whether indeed these 1.8 factors are whether really obtained when you have larger scale multifamily units of hundreds of units that are passed through this commission to the council. So I think it's something that's worth looking at and considering when we approve more and more of these types of units and increase the number I think she's right. I think most families use more than one vehicle. And I think it's worth this commission and the staff to look at that and take very seriously what Ms. Figueroa said in terms of future studies and the empirical evidence of whether indeed these parking factors obtain after so many years of study. So I just want to mention that and thank her for raising that question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Johnson, Chair Simon, I just want to really quickly respond to your comment, and I think you're absolutely right. I think that it's an interesting thought to consider. It's the importance of the public participating in these projects as well, because it goes on to inform future studies and analyses that we do. Regarding I do want to just briefly make a note that in a few months you'll actually receive a parking code amendment proposal that does look at some of our multifamily standards to say, are there specific areas that behave differently when it comes to, say, multifamily parking ratios, for example? Does the Heritage District function different than the rest of the town? Are our standards in line with what other communities are doing and what professional guidance would tell us to do from other communities? That's a little bit broader than what you were exploring, but I do want to say that that's on the planning department's radar and is something that's being actively considered right now. The final comment I wanted to make is on the one space per unit. Just to echo what the applicant was saying, I just meant that as one assigned space per unit. There are more available, but again, there would be at least one within a secured parking area. There's even within that secure parking area, there's more than one total, but there is at least one assigned for each unit in the development, and that's a really important thing to consider when thinking about the parking on this site. So, Commissioner Johnson, I hope that's a sufficient response. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Noah. Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you, Noah. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this point, bring it up to the dais for discussion. Anybody like to jump in? Commissioner Fay.
So Commissioner, or Chairman, I spent a pretty fair amount of time diving deep into this project about, because well, one, I do agree with the comment that there's just so much, the problem is there's so much packed in here that there's no room for error. But the issue that really kind of drove me was the off-site improvements. And particularly the intersection improvements, because I know that that's one that a developer would really like not to do and would really like the town to do. Noah mentioned it, and it's kind of obliquely come around a few ways, but we've got the ultimate alignment already, or the town has the ultimate alignment. All of the improvements we're talking about, all of the improvements, all of the levels of service failures and improvements don't affect curb lines, don't really affect pavement. The only thing they realistically affect is striping. And once they got to, I mean, yeah, striping is, that is an improvement, but we're kind of at the horizon of where, you know, improvements kind of fall off to the edge. They're lucky that Dave Fabiano's the town engineer, not me, because the fact that the town removed the dual lefts years ago and now needs them back, to me, does not mean the town's on the hook for paying them, but that's, he's a generous guy. He's a nice guy. So I was actually, usually I'm kind of a hawk watching out for required offsite improvements, half-street improvements and stuff. This, to me, the discussion's there, it needs to be there, but this to me is, once we got to striping, it's so minimal that it sounds almost like a red flag compared to how little a discussion it really is. So that one put it to bed for me. So while it was a significant discussion, it's almost like, okay, I don't care anymore. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else like to chime in? Commissioner Davis.
Sure, I'll jump in. You know, as I've kind of taken the stance that this is an attractive project all the way through, so design-wise, I think it's really great. I think it's going to be a nice contribution to this corner. The landscape design, I like the formality of it. I like a lot of those things. I think it's going to be a nice quality project. Related to the parking, I think something to consider. Staff's made me comfortable with the parking, with the information, and the applicant with the information that they provided tonight. I feel comfortable with that. I didn't want anything to bleed into the neighborhood. Having said that, I also think we should take into consideration that this is a mixed-use development. So we're going to have some crossover, people living there. Hopefully, that's how it's going to work, people in the neighborhood walking over. So hopefully we'll have a lot of that, and that will relieve some of the parking concern as well. So the fact that they seem to be meeting, you know, what's needed for the parking, I have less concern about that. I appreciate all the updates on all the circulation issues and the street improvements, so I'll be supporting it. I think it's going to be a nice project.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? No? I'll jump in real quick and then we'll look for a motion if there is one. I am nowhere near an engineer, nor am I a traffic specialist whatsoever or a parking specialist. However, sometimes questions do jump into my head and I start thinking probably more than I should about certain things. So I appreciate the insight of both staff and the applicant on this, on the parking. And I'm perfectly fine with where we're at on it. I think that from a design perspective, this is a great asset to this corner. And my only comment, and I'm saying this on the record just because we're here, I've had the conversation with the applicant, and I know the applicant has nothing to do with this whatsoever. But I would like to throw it out to staff that the continuity of this and the two general commercial sites that are sitting there, whoever comes to this, I would love to see on that southeast corner, make sure that there is continuity between the two sites and flow. I think that's extremely important for this. I'd hate to see this, I'll call it a gem, shoved behind a car wash. So I'm just going to throw that out there. With that, unless there's any other comment, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll go ahead and motion to approve DR 22-127.
All right, thank you. I've got a motion to approve by Commissioner Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Johnson. We'll go ahead and open polling. All right, and the motion carries 7-0, so recommendation approval. Thank you very much for coming out, and we greatly appreciate community engagement in this, so. We'll jump from there to item number 16. We've got DR 22-63 Morrison Ranch multifamily. And Ashley, are you on this?
I am. Chairman Simon, I just got a notice that our recording has stopped, so if we could take a quick technical timeout so I can make sure that we have recording for our minute taker.
Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and take, you have 5 minutes, good? Let's take a quick 5 minute and we'll come back. Okay, let's go ahead and jump back up here. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Ashley, you are up. We're on item number 16, DR 22-63, Morrison Ranch multifamily.
Thank you, Chairman and Commission. This is case DR 2263. As you stated, it's Morrison Ranch multifamily. It's located east of the northeast corner of Higley and Warner Roads. It's the property bounded by the red rectangle. This is, as I mentioned, east of Higley Road, so it doesn't have direct access or direct frontage off of Higley Road. To the west of the multifamily property is zoned shopping center, so we do anticipate that developing for commercial uses in the future. To the east is a portion of the Morrison Ranch development that is currently zoned SF6. You can see that there is some developed units along that property. Bounded by the north of this property is Bloomfield Parkway with SF10 lots north of that. Warner Road to the south is currently vacant commercial. It's zoned regional commercial, so we anticipate seeing development of a commercial nature there. And earlier on your agenda, you reviewed the Gabriella Point multifamily, which is just southeast of this property. This property in particular is 15.08 net acres, and the applicant is seeking design review approval of the site plan, landscape plan, grading and drainage, lighting, elevations, colors, and materials. Planning Commission did review this item as a study session in August, and the applicant has been working since that time, both with the neighbors and staff to address comments and concerns related to this project. The site plan itself is shown on the screen. I know it's kind of a lot to take in on this black and white image. So to break it down for you a little bit, there are 2 points of access as indicated by the red arrows. The primary access is off of Warner Road. It's important to note that that is a right in, right out only access. And then there is an access point off of Bloomfield Parkway. That would be a full motion access off of that collector road within Morrison Ranch. The site is comprised of 20 total residential buildings, kind of situated throughout the site. It's zoned multifamily low, and the applicant is proposing a total of 231 dwelling units. That is consistent with the density allowed in that multifamily low zoning category. The density proposed is 13.9 dwelling units per acre. In terms of landscaping, this is consistent with the landscaping required by code. They have 45.9% overall open space. Considerable amenities scattered throughout. They have a pool, an amenity center, pickleball, bocce ball, a dog park provided at the the north portion of the site. And the plantings are consistent with what you would expect in Morrison Ranch. Ash trees, evergreen elm, live oak surround the perimeter. In terms of pedestrian connectivity, the applicant has done a really great job of thinking about how people move throughout a site and making sure that from every residential building there is access to the amenities that they might visit, walking paths that are at the perimeter of the site. At the bottom of this screen, which is the west side of this parcel, you see some future connection nodes. When that commercial develops, we hope to be able to provide some direct connection from this for those pedestrians to access that commercial. There isn't any plan for that site plan at this time, so we don't know, how that will lay out. But the applicant providing those connections here, I think, will provide some value as that site does come in for review. The applicant has also provided some hardscape details as part of their landscape plan. I provided them in the PowerPoint just so that you could see the type of style that they're going for and some of the amenities that they're providing. In terms of elevations, they are using a design consistent with Morrison Ranch. It's a farmhouse style. They've got lap siding, board and batten siding, metal awnings, stucco, so a variety of materials, a variety of colors that is consistent with what you see as you drive through the Morrison Ranch community. This is building B, so an alternate color scheme, a little bit of a different building style, but still in keeping with that farmhouse architecture. And then building C, again, just to provide some additional diversity throughout. There are 3 primary color schemes that would be utilized throughout these buildings as well. And then this is the amenity building that matches that farmhouse style as well. I mentioned the materials that they're using. There's a variety of stone depending on the scheme that they're using. Stucco, board and batten lap siding, flat tile roofs, and metal awnings are used at the various entries to the site. And then I also wanted to provide just an example floor plan to demonstrate that the applicant is meeting the private open space requirement for every unit. They are required to provide a total of 60 square feet of private open space that is covered. And so this, again, is just an example of that, showing those gray areas. They're a little bit difficult to see, but on the top and bottom of those illustrates those private open spaces for each unit. Staff does recommend approval of this project with 3 conditions. I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission may have, or if after you hear from any of the public, I can certainly come back and address any questions or concerns that they may have.
All right, thank you, Ashley. Does anybody have any questions for Ashley at this point? Yeah, Commissioner Bianchi.
Thank you, Chair. Ashley, probably just more of, I'm just, what I was looking at is the right in, the right out you said on Warner. So even with that traffic coming off the 202 via Higley, is that just for overall general safety? I'm sure you guys looked at this and traffic looked at this and that proximity to the intersection. And so I'm guessing just that traffic all coming up from the south will have to utilize Bloomfield Parkway for access?
Yeah, and I think that this exhibit might be the best one to utilize. So if you see south of Warner Road, that there is the Martingale Street. So there are some alignment issues. And so there is a raised median at that location because of those alignment issues.
Just to avoid those conflicts
Correct.
between what is that, Martingale? Okay. All right, I was just curious on that. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Ashley? Commissioner Johnson.
Chairman Simon, Ashley, the elevations, those roof color palettes seem awfully dark. Is that, I don't recall Morrison Ranch having such a dark palette in terms of its elevations. I'm just curious.
I didn't look through approved elevations specifically in this vicinity. Driving through that community, there are a variety of different colors on the roofs, and this is consistent with what you find in that community. Maybe not every house, but there certainly are some darker roofs.
Okay, I just seems a little, anyway, just dark. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Commissioner Fay.
Yes, please. Ashley, did you say there's a raised median in Warner? I'm looking at, I did not see that, and then I'm looking at Google Maps. I don't, or Google Earth. I don't see that. I hope not.
No, great question, but if you look back on that aerial, so that, I guess the reddish color, that's actually been approved, at least the internal routes. And so they're doing the offsites of that now.
And that will include a raised
So
median?
Warner is considered a major arterial, so it'll have a raised median.
So
And so
people-
that commercial to the south already dictated where to meet our so you have to be 660 apart for a full access. And that south development already dictated where the full access movements would be.
So you've got 2 accesses to this property, one on the north side, one on the south side. The one on the south side off Warner will be a right in, right out because there'll be a raised median blocking it?
Yeah, so it'll
Oh.
it'll be constructed with the development to the south. So that's why you probably don't see it on Google Earth, because it's under construction right now.
Okay. Which, that does mean that an awful lot of the traffic coming in will be coming off Bloomfield Parkway now? Okay.
Yeah. Coming in, but coming out, to get to the freeway, yeah, they'll probably use Warner.
All right. Any other questions for Ashley? All right, thank you, Ashley. We'll go to the applicant now. Brennan, or Mr. Ray, sorry.
Good evening again. Brennan Ray, 1850 North Central, here on behalf of the applicant Leon Capital. We're appreciative of staff's presentation and recommendation. To echo what Ashley said, we've worked closely with staff on the design of it to ensure that it meets not only the town standards, but the expectations of Morrison Ranch. Prior to submitting, we do go through a kind of an architectural design review through Morrison Ranch, through the Morrisons. They have worked tirelessly, however you say it. Holy cow, it's a long day, apologize. They've worked very hard to ensure that Morrison Ranch is one of the gems of the town in this area. And so with that, I'm going to keep it really short. We request your approval in accordance with staff's recommendation. Happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
All right, thank you. Any questions? No? I just have one really quick, and this has to do with that alignment of Martingale. I'm assuming there's just no way to move that entrance on Warner to the east to line, because of where the property line is, there's just no way to line those up.
Yeah, Chair Simon, that is correct. What you can see to the edge of this is there is an HOA tract that runs on our east side. And in order for us to shift it over to make it comply with requirements and what's being constructed on the south side, I believe we're going to start chinching in a little bit over to that HOA tract.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant at this point? No? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We do have 2 comment cards here, so I will go ahead and, first one I've got, and I apologize, Jason, is it Williams? All right. So, Jason, you've got 3 minutes, and you'd like to speak. Please state your name.
Jason Williams. I live on Bloomfield, and my brothers are neighbors with us. And our biggest concern is I have young children, a lot of children on our street, and with this added traffic, and just to preface this, we are familiar with the commercial area, and we knew all this was coming. However, with the other things that are brought to light tonight as far as traffic concerns, especially coming off of the expressway, especially with the school being right there also with additional traffic, I don't know why anybody would turn right, then turn left to go into the community or the actual apartment complex. Likely come down Bloomfield, make a right and a right into the complex. What I'm proposing is, can we have some additional signage to say no parking on that road, in addition to speed bumps or some type of speed deterrent on Bloomfield? Because as it sits right now, there are no stop signs from Wrecker to Higley on Bloomfield. The only stop signs are north and south. So literally, as a teenage kid, you know, you're driving fast, you just drive fast down that road. Additional traffic's going to probably condone more of that behavior, and I want to avoid that, especially with having a young family. So I'm just trying to see if we can do to kind of deter, number one, additional traffic, and number two, make it a little bit slower in terms of traffic. I don't think there's any parking signs, no parking signs. There's no ways to slow traffic down. So I'm just trying to see if we can get some speed bumps. Some parts of Mesa and some communities have similar streets where there's no stop signs, and they have larger speed bumps that kind of slow the traffic a little bit. I'm not sure if we have the means of doing so. And going through some of the city information, it looks like a lot of times you guys leave it up to the actual residents to pay for that type of a situation. But I think it warrants that the city look into that because of the commercial space on the corner. That's all I got. So less than 3 minutes, so.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate the comments. Next, I have Jennifer Landers. I'd like to speak, and I'll give you 3 minutes. Please state your name and your residence.
Hi, good evening. Jennifer Landers. I live in Morrison Ranch. Lived in the Morrison Ranch area for 18 years, love the community, which is why we chose to build in the Camelot Homes on Bloomfield. And we are in the lot that is the closest to this proposed development. We knew that that was going to be a development, and we appreciate the efforts that they've made to maintain the original design intent and the size and the scope of the project. Again, echoing the recent comments, my biggest concern is this new issue with the ingress and the egress into this complex. I think that when we were reviewing this previously, that was not something that was raised as far as having this median off of Warner. And now hearing that this evening, that is definitely going to cause concern, because now we're looking at the residential street of Bloomfield being the primary street we're going to have a lot of additional traffic. We're already dealing with a lot of traffic issues. We have the Gilbert Police Department actually coming to our community tomorrow night to speak with us regarding issues that we've been having in the community regarding traffic and some other crime issues. And I think that with the regards to several young families that live on Bloomfield and the children that are out there, I would love to ask that there'd be some further consideration given to what we can do to help, minimize speeding issues, the amount of traffic that's going to be on that Bloomfield area. I don't know who is responsible for that, but I would plead that you would take that into consideration as far as what was mentioned, potential speed bumps or some type of additional signage to help minimize if this is then indeed going to be a primary access point for this new higher level of development coming into that area. It's already a high traffic area with no stop signs, no speed limitations in that area. So thank you for your time.
All right, thank you very much. I don't know, Mr. Ray, if you have anything you'd like to respond to on that? No? You're not required to. I'm just throwing it out there. And then, Ashley, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to respond to on that?
Thank you, Chairman. So I had an opportunity to talk to Mr. Williams before the public hearing, and so I took that opportunity to kind of hear some of his questions, and I talked with Clint. Related to the speed humps, that is something that on collector roadways is not permitted. So we can look at putting out those boxes that kind of let people know their speed, working with the police department, to kind of increase kind of their presence in that area to help. But we can certainly continue those conversations about what options there are.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Ashley or the applicant at this point? All right, not seeing any. Vice Chair, come on.
Thank you, Chairman. Ashley, then as a regard to the no parking signs that he had mentioned, is that something that would be allowed by code?
Chairman and Commissioner Munt, I took a note to look into that. I know that throughout Morrison Ranch, that is pretty common to see no parking signs on certain sides of the road. So I will look into that and see what may exist out there within our plans.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for either Ashley or the applicant? All right, not seeing any, we'll go ahead and, thank you, Ashley. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this item and bring it up to the dais for conversation, if there is any. Yeah, Commissioner Anderson.
I guess my 2 cents on this regarding, I am sensitive to the traffic on Bloomfield, the one good thing is when people are leaving this community, they're taking a left and not traveling through the single-family development that's to their east. I don't see reason why anybody leaving this apartment project, if they're trying to get somewhere, I mean, their closest road is to go to Higley. So the traffic will increase a little bit with the multifamily there, but the good thing is I don't see any reason why they would go east on Bloomfield to travel through the single-family residential. They're going to travel west across the commercial lot that's there. In terms of the parking signs, I don't know what they will actually do. I live in Morrison Ranch, and we have parking signs on my street, and people still park on the side where the parking signs are. So I don't know what those will actually do. So that's my 2 cents. Overall, I think the project is nicely designed. I think the buildings were nicely designed. As Ashley pointed out, or it might have been Brennan, you do have to kind of go through an extensive design review with the Morrisons to get anything to this level. So I'm sure the designs have been really well thought out and vetted. So I do support the project. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Commissioner Bianchi.
I think overall comments. I remember seeing this previously. I think the feedback, especially from the commission, was generally positive. It's on the lower end of the multifamily density, as some of the folks that spoke here tonight said they were expecting this. They knew this development was coming. I do think it's a decent transitional use between the single family and the shopping center closer to Higley. They've provided ample open space, which is kind of in line with Morrison Ranch. Overall, I think it's a good design on the elevations. I think it presents a nice mix of colors and materials, so I'd be supportive.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have any comments? Commissioner Fay?
Yeah, I'm actually a big supporter of this project. The inability to make a left turn in off of Warner, I wish there was a way to work around that, and I hope traffic engineering can sharpen their pencils or put on their creative, ethically fluid, whatever you have to do to get there. But other than that piece, I'm fine with this. I think it's actually it's something we should be advocating for, and that piece does give me pause. But other than that, I think it's a great project.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Johnson.
Commissioner Simon, I agree. I really like what I like about this project, especially is pedestrian circulation. The way people can move around from different parts of the project to the amenities and the landscape plan. So I think it's a very attractive model for this type of development. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Mudd?
Thank you, Chairman. You know, I'll just make the comment that in regard to us as a governing body and our ability to place limitations on development, that when it comes to things like traffic and, you know, as Commissioner Fay said, that the right turn in, right turn out, it does cause pause, but it also is not something within which we have the ability to actually effectively change. And so we can make strong suggestions, and I believe, you know, Mr. Ray and the developers here, along with the Morrisons, do hear this, as they're likely very in tune with the residents. And I think it's a very good project, and I think they've come a long way. And my hope is that the issues where there may be speeding may actually be mitigated by the traffic, by there being less of a wide open area consistently where you can open up the throttle. But that could be wishful thinking. But I just wanted to at least make the statement that as much as we may want to say something about the roadway, you know, as it's a arterial or a collector, we can't do anything about it, as it has to do with the current transportation plan within the town. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I'd like to just chime in really quick, and I would agree. I'm very sensitive to the traffic on Bloomfield and the comments that were made. I actually was encouraged by the comment about speed bumps. I wasn't aware that we couldn't put those on collectors, so that's, I guess, maybe a little bit disheartening, because I thought, oh, that's a great idea. Throw a couple of those in there. But then I also thought, where do we stop? I mean, you know, this development, one or two, and then now they open up again. So understanding that helps me, I guess, if you will. From a design perspective, I think that this is a great layout. Based on where some of the comment came when this was first being thrown around and discussed and potentially added to, I think that this is a great development. I would agree with regards to the right in, right out on Warner. It would be nice to be able to have some sort of change to that. Doesn't sound like it can be. So with that being said, I think the design of the buildings is incredible. I would love to see more of this type of architecture with regards to some of these multifamilies. So with that, I would support this case as well. So unless there's any other comment, I'll entertain a motion.
Chairman, not seeing any other comments. I will then move to approve item number 16, DR 22-63, Morrison Ranch multifamily.
All right, I've got a motion to recommend approval of DR 22-63, item 16 from the Vice Chair. Do I have a second?
I would second.
I have a second from Commissioner Fay. We'll open up the polling. Go ahead and cast your vote. All right, and the motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. Really do appreciate it, and appreciate the community involvement in this for sure. So, all right, with that, we'll move on to our administrative items. Administrative items are for the commissioner discussion and action. It is to the discretion of the majority of the commission regarding public input requests on any administrative items. Persons wishing to speak on administrative items should complete a public comment form indicating the item number on which you wish to address the commission. May or may not accept the public comment. Do I have any administrative items? No, not seeing any. We will jump on. Planning Commission minutes. So in your packet, we had Planning Commission minutes from the December 7th, January 4th, and February 1st meetings. We will need to entertain motions independently on each one of these. So unless there's any comments or edits of any of the minutes, I will accept a motion for, we'll start with the December 7th, 2022. Any comments or motion?
So, Chairman, the only change I had noted, if they can do it, is cases 14, 15, the applicant's name is misspelled. I think it's Rydell. But other than that, that would be the only correction I found. And with that, I would move for approval.
So I've got a motion to approve with the edit of
December 7th, I should say.
the December 7th minutes. A motion to approve by Commissioner Bianchi with the edit of the applicant's name on 14 and 15. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Johnson. Can you open the polling? And the motion carries 7-0. Moving on to the January 4th minutes. Any edits or comments on that? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Okay. Chairman, I'd move to approve the minutes of January 4th, 2023.
All
As
right,
presented.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Bianchi. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair. All those, sorry. I'm getting there. Please cast your vote. Sorry, motion carries 7-0. And we'll move on to February 1st. Any edits or comments on that?
Chairman, if there's no one else has any comments, I would move for approval of the minutes as presented for February 1st,
I have a motion.
2023.
Motion for approval by Commissioner Bianchi. Second?
Second.
I have a second by Vice Chair. Please open polling. Cast your vote. And motion carries 7-0. With that, we don't have executive session. Report from chairman or members of the commission. Anybody have anything they would like to report on? No? All right. Ava, we'll go to you.
Thank you, Chair and Commission. Just a quick note, Erica Prater, who was our planning tech and prepares your packages, has been promoted to Planner 1. So in the next couple of months, you'll probably see her with cases before you. We also did a search for a senior planner, and we have had someone accept an offer, and she will start the first week of April. So we're getting closer to being full staff.
Great news.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Unless there's anything else, we will go ahead and adjourn, and our next meeting is sometime in April. Actually, I think it's April 5th. So, all right. Have a great night. Hopefully it's dry out there and the rain has stopped. So.